Chapter 471. Do you dare?
Bing, 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 bing.
With his cultivation sealed, how could the old man withstand Xianxia's attacks? In just a few moments, he was reduced to a pig head. I want to kill you. The reason why he brought the soulless metal humanoid here was so that he could be cured of his affliction. Yet, he was beaten up like that instead. Unable to hold himself back anymore, the old man clenched his teeth in anger and his eyes turned bloodshot. Kill me. I thought you wanted to use my hand to kill him? Why do you want to kill me? Smiling faintly, Xianxia looked at the old man with a look of leisure. What are you saying? I don't know what you are getting at. Hearing those words, the old man panicked for a moment. However, he concealed it swiftly. You don't know. Coming over here to possess another person's body and going to the extent of trying to eradicate his soul. And you tell me that you don't know anything at all. Xianxia's lips curled him in disdain. Possess. Jin Songhai, Hall Master Sai, and the others were taken aback. They glanced at the old man once more, but this time, with wariness. Possession was the means of a soul oracle, and it was also known as borrowing a body to reanimate a soul. Just as the name hinted at, a soul oracle whose lifespan was coming to an end could forcefully suppress or destroy a person's soul and make use of their body to come alive again. This was an extremely mysterious and vile process. Don't worry, he hasn't succeeded yet. Seeing the wariness in everyone's eyes, Xianxia chuckled. If he had succeeded already, there'd be nothing I could do about the matter anymore. Xianxia had previously said that he couldn't do anything if the old man was plagued by an evil spirit, and these words had left everyone stumped. However, it seemed that instead of being plagued by an evil spirit, this fellow was possessed instead. You! Don't spout nonsense. I am myself, and I've only been plagued by an evil spirit. The old man clenched his jaws. You've been plagued by an evil spirit. Xianxia shook his head. Circling around the old man with his hands behind his back, Xianxia said, I don't know what method you used to suppress the original host soul, but I can still roughly tell what happened. Despite coming to the auction hall to sell the soulless metal humanoid, you refused to say what you wanted and kept everyone guessing. If I'm not wrong, at that moment, the original host soul is still in control of the body. It wasn't that he didn't want to say anything, but that you were exerting a pressure on him to prevent him from speaking up. Under the pressure from everyone else, he grew agitated, and this created an opening for you to strike. Then, you said that you'd take the person who managed to buy the soulless metal humanoid to the tomb of the Soul Oracle. If I'm not mistaken, you probably intended to lure someone there and activate some traps so as to claim the bodies of a few more experts. Xianxia harumphed. Otherwise, how could a person who is on the verge of death due to being plagued by an evil spirit in the Soul Oracle tomb propose to head there a second time? Unless he's masochistic and eager to die, there's no way a rational person would do so. This. Jin Songhai and Hall Master Sai shuddered in shock. Previously, back in the auction hall, under the intense questioning of the crowd, the old man did seem to intend to say something, but his body simply shook and he fell silent. Afterward, he immediately mentioned the issue regarding the Soul Oracle tomb. Thinking back, it did seem slightly bizarre. Even though the old man managed to obtain the invaluable soulless metal humanoid in the Soul Oracle tomb, he was possessed as well, putting him on the verge of death. It didn't make any sense for him to want to return back to such a dangerous place. It was clearly a huge flaw in logic. It was a pity that everyone had been blinded by the heritage of the Soul Oracle and the treasures contained within the tomb and failed to consider this logic lapse. I only intended to hike up the prices. The old man said. Hike up the prices? All right. Xianxia chuckled softly. Elder Jin and Hall Master Sai, may I trouble you two to release the seal on him? Release the seal. The duo was taken aback. Even though Xianxia seemed to have struck the old man viciously, they were actually just superficial wounds. Once the seal was released, the other party would regain the cultivation level of a transcendent mortal 2 Dan. If so, Xianxia surely wouldn't be a match for the other party. Don't worry. Knowing what the duo was worried about, Xianxia shot them a reassuring gaze. All right. Even though Xianxia was still young, he never did anything he wasn't certain of. Thus, The duo let go simultaneously. Who? The seal suppressing the old man's cultivation vanished and strength returned to his body. Humph, since you all aren't capable of expelling the evil spirit at all, I'll be taking my leave. Farewell. After the seal was released, the old man heaved a sigh of relief and prepared to leave. However, barely after he took 2 steps, a young man blocked his path. Ha, with just your cultivation, do you think that you can stop me? The old man sneered coldly. Even though he couldn't tell the exact strength of the young man before him, from the fact that he got others to fight in his place, he could deduce that the other party's strength was inferior to his. Give it a try then. Xianxia didn't bother saying anything unnecessary. Lifting his leg, he sent a kick toward the other party. Humph! The old man's complexion darkened. His palm immediately struck forward. However, before he could strike anything, he felt an ache at his chest. Pang! He was sent flying, and he crashed heavily to the ground. You! The old man narrowed his eyes. Are you very surprised? Xianxia stepped forward and lifting his hands, he struck the other party. Pa! The shape of a palm was printed on the face of the old man as he fell back down to the ground. This! The crowd stared at one another. A transcendent mortal 2-dan pinnacle cultivator isn't able to match a half-transcension cultivator. What is going on? I don't understand either. The old man clearly possessed the cultivation of a transcendent mortal 2-dan. When he was sealed, everyone had witnessed the immense strength that he possessed. How in the world did he get subdued so easily? It was as if he couldn't retaliate against a half-transcension cultivator at all. Even though Xianxia possessed the strength beyond that of his cultivation realm, dealing with a transcendent mortal 1-dan primary stage cultivator would already be tough. Smashing a transcendent mortal 2-dan pinnacle cultivator like that so easily was completely out of the question. Could it be that teacher has grown stronger again? In contrast to everyone's shock, Xianxia and the others looked excited. Their teacher's ability to achieve breakthroughs as easily as drinking water had left a lasting impression in their mind. Seeing the transcendent mortal 2-dan pinnacle cultivator being crushed so easily made them think that Xianxia had achieved a huge breakthrough once more. No, that's not it. It's the old man who has become weaker. His current fighting prowess is only that of a transcendent mortal 1-dan primary stage cultivator. Zhao Feiwu said. Due to the limitations of her physical body, she had never cultivated before. Even so, having read through innumerable books, her knowledge and eye of discernment were extraordinary. Gongzi is right. His current fighting prowess is at most transcendent mortal 1-dan primary stage only. Just that, for some reason, I can certainly feel the strength of a transcendent mortal 2-dan pinnacle flowing within him. Jin Songhai said. Despite having the cultivation of a transcendent mortal 2-dan pinnacle, his fighting prowess is only that of a transcendent mortal 1-dan primary stage. This. Hearing those words, Xianxia and the others were baffled. Luo Qin was also bewildered. Did you hear that? I'm not the only one who has noticed it. Everyone can tell as much too. What else do you have to say? Halting his attack, Xianxia smiled at the old man whom he had just beaten up. It's because I'm injured. That's why I can't display my full strength. The old man gritted his teeth. Having predicted that the other party would surely bring up such an argument, Xianxia refuted, even if you're injured, it's impossible for your strength to fall by 2 realms. Xianxia, what's going on? Seeing that the old man was unable to explain himself, Hall Master Sai couldn't hold back his curiosity anymore and asked. Simple. The strength of the soul possessing and the person being possessed are of different cultivation. If I'm not mistaken, the one possessed has the cultivation of transcendent mortal 2-dan pinnacle, whereas the soul possessing only has the cultivation of transcendent mortal 1-dan primary stage. Xianxia continued, even though he has taken over the body already, he hasn't adapted fully to it yet. On top of that, my pummeling has made it harder for his physical body and soul to harmonize with one another. As such, even though he is able to move the body easily, he isn't able to move the origin energy in the other party's body, thus resulting in his weakness. When Xianxia first saw the old man on the stage of the auction hall, he managed to see numerous flaws through the eye of insight. This, in itself, had created doubts in his mind. Under normal circumstances, given his current cultivation, he would only be able to peer into the flaws of a transcendent mortal 1-dan primary stage cultivator at most. Yet, he was able to see the problems of a transcendent mortal 2-dan pinnacle. Thinking about it now, it was probably due to the soul that had possessed this body being of transcendent mortal 1-dan primary stage. From the very start, it was extremely rare for a soul to have high affinity with the body possessed. The trauma caused to the body under such a state would result in the body rejecting the soul of the possessor. And thus, even though the old man clearly had the cultivation of transcendent mortal 2-dan pinnacle, he was unable to display it at all. Why you? The old man's face paled. He could have come up with a logical excuse for it if he had sufficient time. However, now that everything was explained so rationally, even if he were to explain now, it would already be too late. After all, the injuries dealt to him previously were just superficial wounds. To a transcendent mortal 2-dan pinnacle cultivator, those were negligible. There's no need for you to be so surprised. The reason why I said that an evil soul is plaguing you is so as to lower your guard. This way, you'll think that this is a good opportunity to get rid of the other soul competing with you over the body through my hands. Am I right? Xianxia pushed on. Even though the other party had managed to take over the old man's body, he had yet to eradicate the original host soul. In fact, the original host soul was still on the upper hand just a moment ago. Otherwise, the old man wouldn't have been able to bring the soulless metal humanoid here and auction it for a way to suppress him. The plan of the possessing soul was indeed brilliant. If it was anyone else, they would have surely fallen for the trick and killed the original host soul, thus completing the possession. But it was a pity that he met with Xianxia. There was nothing that could conceal itself from the heavens. Putting aside a soul, even a speck of dust couldn't escape from its sight. Since you've managed to see through it, there's no need for me to hide any longer. That's right, I possess this fellow. Seeing that there was no way to hide any more, the old man stood up and harumphed coldly. To think that it is really true. A transcendent mortal 1-dan soul possessing a transcendent mortal 2-dan pinnacle cultivator's body. Hearing the other party agree to it, everyone's faces turned pale. There were almost 2 realms of difference between transcendent mortal 1-dan primary and transcendent mortal 2-dan pinnacle. That was an entire world of difference in terms of fighting prowess. It was a gap that was impossible to breach. Yet, the soul still managed to possess the body successfully. How in the world did it succeed? That was way too fearsome. It's good that you've admitted to it. In truth, all those that I said before are just my conjectures. If you didn't admit to it, I would have no way of proving the matter. Xianxia said. What Xianxia said was the truth. The Library of Heaven's Path only reflected flaws. It wouldn't analyze a situation or provide answers for Xianxia. He only deduced the entire situation by stringing all of the flaws reflected together through logic. He also didn't expect that he would be spot on. The old man's face reddened and he nearly spewed blood. If only he'd known that it was a conjecture, he would have never admitted to it. Now, it would be hopeless even if he tried to deny it. There's no need for you to act so gleefully. Narrowing his eyes, the old man tossed aside his dismal and sneered coldly. My soul is in control now. Even if you know that I've possessed the body, what can you do? Do you intend to kill me? Or rather, I should ask, do you dare? Chapter 472. Possessing Sun Chong. The soul that is in control effectively becomes the owner of the body. If another soul couldn't make it in time to fill up the gap following that soul's expulsion, there was a high possibility that the body might die, thus becoming a corpse. At the very least, at the current situation, even though the previous host soul was suppressed, it still stood a chance. Once the body became a corpse, he would be doomed. Xianxia, the study of the soul is an incomparably complex subject. Even gods dare not claim to fully understand it. Given that he's in control now, if the other soul is unable to take back control in time, that would be no different from murder. Hall Master Sai's expression turned grim. Indeed. You should think twice. Luo Qin also panicked. Everyone knew that the old man was here to conduct a trade. If he were to die here, the reputation of the auction hall would fall into the gutters. I should indeed think twice. Xianxia nodded in agreement. They were right. The topic of souls was incredibly profound. Conventional rules may not necessarily apply to it. If Xianxia fails to resolve the issue properly, the old man might become an idiot or even worse, meet his demise. If so, it would be hard for him to avoid responsibility. Many people know about our trade. If anything happens to me, the appraiser hall and auction hall will be doomed. Seeing the hesitation in everyone's eyes, the old man chuckled. Why don't I suggest something? Let's continue on with our trade. I'll give you the soulless metal humanoid, but, in exchange, you have to eradicate the soul of the previous host for me. In the end, regardless of whether you are trading with me or him, you will obtain the soulless metal humanoid, so why should you take the risk? There was nothing for Xianxia to lose from accepting his deal. On the contrary, if he were to insist on saving the previous host, it was one thing if he succeeded, but what if he were to fail? Xianxia. Luo Qin looked at Xianxia anxiously. He was a businessman and, in his view, there was nothing profitable from going through so much risk to save a mere passerby. In any case, everyone only knew that this fellow was plagued by an evil spirit. Regardless of which one was killed, as long as he walked out of the appraiser hall alive, the auction hall's reputation could be retained. Your words do make sense. My goal is the soulless metal humanoid, so there's indeed no need for me to take this risk. Sighing, Xianxia's eyebrows shot up and he glanced at the old man indifferently. However, did you just say that there's nothing I can do? I happen to have just thought of one method and I would like to give it a try. Try. Not expecting the other party to want to make a move despite having persuaded him the entire time, Luo Qin's face reddened in panic. Are you trying it out just for fun? You do know that a life is at stake here, right? Gongzi. Worried, Jin Songhai turned to Gongzi in hopes of getting him to convince Xianxia otherwise. But this time, Zhao Feiwu waved his hands grimly and said, Don't. This is the responsibility and mission of a master teacher. This isn't something he should avoid. Behind the respect and prestige master teachers possessed was heavy responsibility. Xianxia didn't know the name and background of this old man, and he never even interacted with him before. However, if he were to overlook his life and death, what would be left of his morals? How could an immoral person enlighten the world and guide his students? If one is upright, his intentions will be obeyed without a command. If one isn't upright, his command will not move anyone. Guiding a student wasn't just about imparting him the best cultivation technique so that they could grow strong. More importantly, one had to instill the correct values in them. Otherwise, even if they were to mature, they would only become scum and bring harm to the world. If so, master teachers would lose their purpose of existence. This. Jin Songhai froze, and he clenched his fists tightly. As a poison master, he could resort to underhanded tricks to achieve his goals. However, the other party was different. He was a master teacher whose responsibility was to enlighten the world. If he were to cower before difficulty, how could he win the hearts of his student? The old man didn't expect for Xianxia to adamantly choose to deal with him despite the advantages and disadvantages being set out clearly. His face darkened and he said, So, you intend to stand against me? Stand against you? You're thinking too much. I just want to expel you. After all, this body doesn't belong to you. Shaking his head, Xianxia flicked his wrist and a few silver needles appeared on his palm. Silver needles? You intend to use this to deal me a soul? He thought that the other party had some idea in mind, but after seeing what the other party took out, the old man burst into laughter. Those needles might be able to heal one's physical injuries and resolve one's cultivation bottleneck. But to deal with a soul? You must be joking. It was as though using an arrow to shoot a fly futile. Disregarding the old man's contempt, Xianxia infused a surge of zhenqi into the needles and flicked his finger. A cold gleam flashed as the needles shot through the air. Needles are completely ineffective against souls. Seeing that Xianxia really intended to use those needles to deal with the old man, Hall Master Sai slapped his face. Given how confident the other party was, he thought that he might have some good idea in mind. In the end, it seemed like the other party intended to just try everything that seemed plausible. Hall Master Sai had read quite a few books on soul oracles, and so he knew a bit about souls. Souls were intangible, and coming into contact with it through material objects was impossible. It was just like using one's sword to cut air. Even if the needle struck the old man, it would be ineffective on the intangible soul. Perhaps, it might even cause meridian blockage, resulting in internal injuries for the body. To expel a soul, one has to prepare plain clothes, yellow amulets, an altar of tributes to the heavens, and a formation as well. There's no way a silver needle can work. Knowing that the method wouldn't work, Hall Master Sai shook his head. He immediately revealed everything he knew in hopes that Xianxia could follow the conventional method. However, halfway through his words, he gulped down a mouthful of saliva and started trembling. How is this possible? As soon as the silver needle pierced into the arrogant old man's body, the latter's face immediately paled. Fear surfaced in his eyes. He wanted to escape, but he fell to the ground instead, convulsing ceaselessly. With just a single needle, the other party's soul lost control? How in the world did he manage to do it? If souls were that easy to deal with, soul oracles wouldn't have been such a feared existence back then so as to require the master-teacher pavilion to make a move personally. Why your Xianxia? While Hall Master Sai and the others were overwhelmed with shock, the old man was frenzied. He had just said the silver needle would be useless when such a situation occurred. The intense fear he felt made him shriek uncontrollably. What he feared wasn't the silver needle but the other party's Xianxia. That Xianxia seemed to carry a bizarre strength that expelled souls. Upon contact with it, his soul felt as though a bottle of hard alcohol being set ablaze. The excruciating pain made him feel as though he was being torn apart. This is superior Xianxia. The elder narrowed his eyes and a thought appeared in his head. Legend had it that due to the inconceivable purity of superior Xianxia, it possessed the ability to ward off evil. This was also the main reason why, despite the incredible means of the soul oracles, they still chose to avoid crossing the paths of master teachers back then. Just that, superior Xianxia was something that very few people in the master-teacher pavilion possessed, inherited only by the descendants of the Kong Shu and his students. Why in the world did this fellow possess it as well? Could this fellow be a descendant of Kong Shu's lineage as well? If that was the case, he was truly an existence to be feared. He had only barely escaped from the eerie tomb and he just had to meet with this person. Fate sure was cruel. No, if this continues on, I'll surely die. As the number of silver needles on him increased, Xianxia was constantly being transmitted over via the tip of the needle, threatening to tear him apart. The old man's eyes turned crimson. Superior Xianxia was the bane of soul oracles. If this were to go on, there would be only one result: he would be incinerated into oblivion. I have to find someone to possess. Knowing that he would surely crumble if this were to go on, the old man bore with the pain and silently assessed the group before him. Continuing to remain in this body would only lead to his death. The only plausible course of action at this moment was to possess someone else and find a way in the future to exact vengeance. But even if he were to successfully possess someone here, he had to make sure that the bizarre young man wouldn't find out. Otherwise, if the other party were to launch another course of attack on him, he would still be doomed. Damn it! To force me into possessing another body once more, I'll never forget this grudge. Even though he had made up his mind, the old man's heart was dripping blood. Possession wasn't as easy as it sounded. Every single attempt at possession would cause immense damage to his soul. Not only would his cultivation fall, his soul would also be significantly wounded as well. Before possessing the body of this old man, his cultivation was actually at Transcendent Mortal 3 Dan primary stage. However, after the possession, his cultivation fell by 2 cultivation realms to Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan primary stage. In other words, even if he were to succeed, his cultivation would plummet sharply. Perhaps, it might fall by another 2 cultivation realms once more, falling down to Jizuan. It'll have to be one of them. Roaring furiously, he looked around and finally found an ideal target. Of the entire room, the weakest one should be Zhao Feiwu, who had never cultivated before. However, She had quite a few treasures on her that made it difficult for even a transcendent mortal 3Dan to kill her, less be said, an incomplete soul like him. Thus, the only viable targets were Zhao Ya, Sun Qiong, and the others. Their strengths were at Xianxia realm, so even if his cultivation fell once more after possession, he would still be able to suppress them easily. He is the one. The old man's eyes glowed as he focused his attention on a plump man standing not too far away. That fellow's cultivation was the lowest of the group, and judging from the dull-witted expression on his face, he seemed to have the lowest wariness of the group. Thus, it should be easiest to possess his body. Possession. Having chosen a target, the old man immediately acted, knowing that he might lose his chance if he were to dawdle. Who? His soul immediately converted into an intangible smoke which gushed straight toward the plump man. Putong. As soon as the soul left, the old man's body immediately froze and fell motionless. He's gone. Upon seeing the changes, Hall Master Sai cheered in delight. The lack of reaction meant that there was no soul to control the body at the moment. Most probably, the possessing soul was driven into a corner some method of this Xianxia, leaving it with no choice but to escape. When the young man said that he was going to give it a try, Hall Master Sai thought that the possibility would surely be extremely slim. Never in his dreams did he expect that the other party would succeed so easily. UN. Then, the unconscious old man suddenly jolted and his eyes slowly opened. As the possessing soul escaped, the original soul was finally free of its shackles, allowing it to regain control over the body. I am itinerant cultivator Luo Zhu. Thank you Xianxia for saving my life. Even though his soul had been suppressed during this period of time, he was still able to see the entire proceedings clearly. He knew that if it wasn't for this young man's persistence, the one to die would have surely been him. No amount of words could express the gratitude he felt for the other party. Standing up, he was just about to express his deep gratitude when a sound echoed not too far away. Achoo! A plump man standing a short distance away suddenly felt a gust of chill and shivered. This is bad, he is being possessed. Hearing the sneezing sound, the old man Luo Zhu suddenly remembered something. His eyes narrowed and he immediately exclaimed. A cultivator's body is tempered by Xianxia, making them invulnerable to common illnesses. Under normal conditions, they would never sneeze. Back then, when Luo Zhu was being possessed, he also sneezed. Given that the fellow had just left and this plump man immediately sneezed, it was clear that he was trying to take over the body of the latter. Chapter 473, Nourishment of the Oracle Soul. Leaping cultivation to think that this fellow would still try to possess other people despite having been driven off by Xianxia. Luo Zhu's face immediately paled. Possession. Everyone was taken aback. The soul was an intangible matter. As such, when the possessing soul left the old man's body, no one could tell where it went. That's right. Back then, when I was possessed, I also sneezed. That fellow must have surely entered his body. Luo Zhu hurriedly pointed toward the plump man. Me. Naturally, the plump man was Sun Qiong. He was just watching the young master flaunt his immense capability in expelling the soul when the old man pointed a finger toward him. Taken aback, he blinked his eyes innocently and said, I've been possessed. Shouldn't possession result in a tug between the souls? If so, why was he still standing completely fine here? That fellow is incomparably cunning. He must have known that Xianxia would expel him as soon as he takes control of your body. As such, he chose to hide within your body. Luo Zhu said. Having been possessed once before, he'd learned quite a bit about the means of the soul oracles. Hide. Sun Qiong scratched his head. That's right. Given the size of a human body, once he decides to conceal his presence, it'll be impossible to find him. Luo Zhu panicked. If an intangible object like a soul were to really try to conceal itself, it could be lying practically anywhere within a person's body. Even the most formidable of people wouldn't be able to sense it at all. This way, it would be equivalent to this plump man being equipped with a ticking time bomb. He could possibly be possessed at any moment. Luo Zhu felt incredibly guilty. It was due to helping him that another person got harmed. If that's really the case, the situation is really bad then. Hall Master Sai clenched his fists tightly. Based on the few books that he had browsed through in the past, it would be one thing if the possessing soul were to make a move and forcibly wrestle for control over the body. But if the soul decided to conceal itself and make use of the other party's body to nourish itself as though a leech, that could prove to be troublesome. Under such circumstances, it was like a virus lying dormant in your body. If the illness hadn't even struck yet, even the best of physicians couldn't possibly treat you. Xianxia harumphed and said, "He has decided to hide himself? He sure is bold." He didn't expect the other party would dare possess Sun Qiong right after he had expelled him from the old man's body. If he had known about it earlier, he would have sent a torrent of his Xianxia in to destroy his soul instantly. But still, this problem wasn't too difficult for him. Even 7-star master teachers who were known to specialize in the subject of souls might find it difficult to find a hiding soul, but he was different. With the library of Heaven's Path in hand, there was no flaw that he couldn't find. A mere hiding soul was nothing before it. Sun Qiong, execute a punching routine. Xianxia said. Yes. Nodding his head, Sun Qiong's clenched fists shot out, creating a huge gust of wind in the surroundings. Upon seeing his fist technique, the mouths Jin Songhai, Hall Master Sai, and the others twitched. To think that a Xianxia realm expert would still be using a mortal low-tier battle technique. They found it hard to look at those incredibly crude and simple moves. Even 5-year-old kids were able to execute several of these kinds of battle techniques in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, and yet this fellow was using this. Just the thought of it left them light-headed. I've been too busy with my cultivation technique recently that I neglected my battle techniques. Sun Qiong could tell what everyone was thinking through their expression, and he felt a little embarrassed. Even though his cultivation had soared during this period of time, he didn't cultivate any new battle techniques to match his newfound strength. He was still stuck with the moves he'd used back in Xianxia Kingdom. Naturally, before the experts of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, the battle techniques of an unranked kingdom meant nothing at all. Given the other party's battle technique and his slightly unsteady cultivation, they could easily wipe out dozens of him with just a single finger. Recalling how they were actually scared by this fellow back then in the Shenyuan Kingdom Poison Hall, Jin Songhai and Jiyu Mu felt a little awkward. All right. Ignoring the expression of the crowd, Xianxia had already managed to find the location where the soul was hiding after a book was compiled in the library of Heaven's Path. Taking out a silver needle, he immediately pierced it into the spot. Pooh! As soon as the silver needle pierced into Sun Qiong's body, a piercing scream echoed from within. Why you? How did you know I was here? An agitated ripple of a soul echoed by everyone's ears as though a voice. Clearly, that fellow who possessed Sun Qiong didn't expect to be found in an instant. If you get out now, I will spare your life. Xianxia harumphed as Xianxia rumbled on the tip of the silver needle. Get out. Humph. Since you want to destroy me, let's die together then. This fellow is only of Xianxia realm. I might be unable to devour Luo Zhu, but devouring this fellow still isn't a problem at all. Even if you were to kill me, what you will be left with is just a corpse. The frenzied thoughts of the soul came gushing out. Don't harm the innocent. Luo Zhu anxiously stepped forward. Even he had nearly failed to hold on while wrestling control with the other party. Given how this plump man was only at Xianxia realm, if the other party were to really attempt a possession, the plump man's soul would surely be completely devoured in an instant. It's too late to beg with me now. Along with the furious howling of the soul, a powerful aura abruptly engulfed Sun Qiong, striking his consciousness, attempting to devour him altogether. Since I'll die anyway, I'll recoup my losses by dragging one or two down with me. After killing him, I'll devour the others as well. How are you going to do about it? Do you think you can be bound down a soul? Ha ha. Ah. The heck? What is this? Save me. Just as the soul was gleefully trying to devour Sun Qiong whole, a frightened scream suddenly echoed. Following which, everyone felt the aura of the incomparably arrogant and powerful soul shatter apart, as though a balloon placed atop of a pot of sizzling oil. What happened? Luo Zhu was dumbstruck. Hall Master Sai and the others also widened their eyes in shock. They had clearly felt the soul's killing intent for themselves previously. Why did it suddenly begin to shout in agony, as though it had seen a ghost. Did Xianxia do something? Everyone hurriedly turned to look at Xianxia, only to see him dumbfounded, unable to comprehend what was going on. Turning to look at Sun Qiong once more, his eyes were widened and he shook his hands frantically. It wasn't me. Boom! Before he could finish his words, the aura of the plump man suddenly surged as though he had eaten some incredibly nutritious tonic. His cultivation realm soared swiftly from Xianxia realm primary stage. This is nourishment of the oracle soul, leaping cultivation. Luo Zhu and Hall Master Sai's vision suddenly turned dark simultaneously. What does that mean? Zhong Xian asked. While ordinary cultivators cultivate their physical bodies and Xianxia, soul oracles are different in the sense that they cultivate their souls. Their entire cultivation is contained within their soul such that even if they were to possess someone, they could recover back to their original strength swiftly. Luo Zhu's lips turned pale. Now that Soul Oracle's soul has been destroyed, his entire cultivation has been reduced into nourishment for your servant's body. There's such a matter as well. Zhong Xian was taken aback. Indeed. The strength of soul oracles is derived purely from soul energy, and it has no attributes whatsoever. It is compatible with all cultivators, and there is no threat of a conflict at all. If I'm not mistaken, your servant's cultivation will surely increase by leaps and bounds. Even until now, Luo Zhu still had a dazed look on his face as he stared at the ignorant Sun Qiong. What kind of monsters did he meet this time? A young man who wasn't even 20 yet was able to expel the possessing soul of the soul oracle from him with just a silver needle. His servant turned out to be even more formidable. A soul oracle tried to devour him, only to end up being devoured himself. He was able to devour even a soul oracle. Jiyu Mu and Jin Songhai, who was just making light of Sun Qiong a moment ago due to his mediocre battle technique, suddenly turned pale. Soul Oracle was one of the most fearsome occupations in the ancient times. Back then, even the reputation of the poison masters paled to them. There were no experts who wouldn't tremble before them. And yet, this fellow devoured one of their members as though it was nothing at all. Did you have to be so monstrous? It was no wonder why you acted so arrogantly at the poison hall back then. It seems like you have the capability to back your actions. His soul cultivation is currently at an unfathomable level. Make sure not to offend him in the future. Clenching his fists tightly, Jin Songhai hurriedly instructed his student through telepathy. Even Luo Zhu, a transcendent mortal 2-dan pinnacle expert, was helpless before the possession of the soul oracle, and he could only be tortured day and night by it. Yet, this fellow, despite possessing only the cultivation of a Xianxia realm, was able to kill the other party so easily. The strength of his soul must have reached an astounding level. If even the servant is so formidable, how powerful must the young master be? Thinking so, Jin Songhai turned to look at the young man not too far away in awe. Since even a mere servant could devour a transcendent mortal realm soul oracle so easily, the young master must be even more formidable than that. It was no wonder why he was adept in so many occupations, and his eye of discernment was extraordinary. Perhaps, even though his cultivation seemed to be only half transcension before them, his true strength might be far beyond that. Just as he was overwhelmed by shock, Sun Qiong's rising aura finally came to a halt. From Xianxia realm, his cultivation surged swiftly and broke through the bottleneck of a half transcension, thus successfully advancing to transcendent mortal 1-dan. Even though the cultivation of a soul oracle would plummet after a possession, that fellow was devoured even before he had a chance to possess him. In other words, the energy his soul harnessed was still that of a transcendent mortal 1-dan. Having devoured the entire strength of a transcendent mortal 1-dan soul, Sun Qiong's cultivation managed to soar above Zhong Xian's, reaching transcendent mortal 1-dan intermediate stage. However, as this energy came from an external source, Sun Qiong's ability to drive it was still immature. As such, his fighting prowess was still far beneath Zhong Xian. My cultivation. Sensing the change in his body, Sun Qiong blinked his eyes blankly. Even until now, he hadn't made sense of the situation yet. Wasn't that fellow going to devour him? Did the other party's compassion suddenly work up, and knowing that since he was going to die, he allowed himself to be devoured instead? It's the Xianxia that young master left within me. Quickly turning his gaze into his body, he soon came to a realization. Back then, when he went to Shenyuan Kingdom Poison Hall, fearful for his safety, the young master had left a surge of Xianxia in his body. However, he ended up not using it in the end, and gradually, he forgot about the matter. And previously, when the soul tried to devour him, the surge of Xianxia immediately gushed forward to protect him, reducing the assailant into ashes. In reality, his guess was spot on. That was indeed the case. When Zhongxian treated Luo Zhu previously, in order to prevent the other party from realizing the uniqueness of the Heaven's Path Xianxia, he only infused a tinge of it in each silver needle. On the other hand, he'd left an entire surge within Sun Qiong's body. That was a difference in quantity of nearly 1,000 times. The soul of that soul oracle had already been wounded before, so how could it possibly survive that onslaught? Thank you, young master. Coming to a realization, Sun Qiong was just about to run forward to thank the young master for saving his life when, unbeknownst to him, the calm young master was already standing before Luo Zhu. Elder Luo Zhu, is it? May I ask you, where did you capture the soul oracle from? Can you get a few more here so that my students can make a breakthrough in their cultivation as well? Luo Zhu. Hall Master Sai. Chapter 474. The bizarre soulless metal humanoid. Other people would tremble in fear upon hearing the reputation of the soul oracle, escaping as far as they could. And yet, this fellow actually wanted to obtain a few more so that his students could make a breakthrough. Everyone felt their lower jaws falling to the floor, and they nearly spurted blood. If anyone else had said such words, they would definitely doubt if they had gone mad. However, after the incident with Sun Qiong, they knew that the other party was making an earnest request. Capturing soul oracles to raise one's cultivation. Big brother, are you treating that fearsome occupation as a nourishment pill? Wiping the cold sweat off his forehead, Luo Zhu hurriedly explained, that. Zhongshe, the soul oracles have already died out. It's been that way since ancient times. The reason why this one was still alive is probably because it made use of some secret art to put itself in a dormant state, and I only happened to wake it up unintentionally. There won't be many of such exceptions in the world. Soul oracles didn't number many, even during the ancient times, and after the crusade the master-teacher pavilion launched against it back then, those who survived could be counted on one's hands. To find even one required immense luck. Did you think that they are like potatoes and carrots on the street, and you can easily fill a sack of them anywhere? To find a few to augment the cultivation of your students. You sure know how to dream. There aren't many of them. That's truly a pity. Zhongxian sighed in disappointment. Seeing how easily Sun Qiong advanced from Zhongshe realm to transcendent mortal one Dan as easily as though eating or drinking. If he were to manage to obtain a few of them, he wouldn't have to worry about the cultivation of Jiao Ya and the others. If they could reach transcendent mortal realm, they would surely be a great assistance even if they were to reach the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Knowing that finding other soul oracles depended heavily on luck, Zhongxian decided not to dawdle on the topic. Thus, he turned to Luo Zhu and asked, right, about the soul oracle tomb where you found the soulless metal humanoid, can you tell us your story? The others were also intrigued by the matter. Where in the world did this fellow obtain the soulless metal humanoid from, and how in the world did he end up getting possessed by a soul oracle? I can only blame my own greed for the matter. I found some possible clues to a soul oracle tomb on an ancient book, and thinking that there might be invaluable treasures housed there, I went over. In the end, I did manage to find a few soulless metal humanoids. However, right after I kept one of them, I was possessed by the soul oracle there. Flustered, I immediately escaped. Luo Zhu's face turned red in embarrassment. His experience was rather similar to what the others guessed. He managed to find a soul oracle tomb, so he entered it in search of treasure. Yet, he couldn't have expected that a soul oracle was lying in wait for a victim. After wrestling for many days, he felt that the other party was getting stronger and stronger, and he sensed that he would be doomed if this were to continue on. Thus, he immediately headed over to the auction hall so as to make use of the appraiser hall's reputation to gather a larger group of people interested in the soul oracles here in the hope that one of them could cure him of his affliction. It was fortunate that his luck wasn't bad. He managed to meet Zhongshe. Otherwise, if it were anyone else, the other party would have surely traded with the soul oracle and destroyed his soul instead. After hearing the other party's experience, Xian asked. "I would like to take a look at the Soul Oracle tomb and see if I can find their heritage. Can you bring me over?" The reason why he came to Honghai City was to find the heritage of the Soul Oracles so as to find a method to wake Lu Chong up. Since there was an opportunity right before him, naturally, he couldn't simply let it go. Go to the Soul Oracle tomb. Luo Zhu's body trembled in fear. The previous experience had already left him wary of the location. As such, he couldn't help but feel intense fear from the thought of having to return there. "If you're worried, you can just tell me the location. I can head there alone." After hesitating for a moment, Luo Zhu clenched his jaws and said, "There's no need for that. Since Xianxia has saved me, my life belongs to you. If you really intend to head there, I'll lead you over." If not for this Xianxia, his soul would definitely have been eradicated. The huge favor that the other party had shown him was definitely beyond the value of a mere soulless metal humanoid. However, "Xianxia, you have to be careful. That place is treacherous, so I think that it would be best for you should make some additional preparations beforehand. Otherwise, I fear that, even with your extraordinary capability, you might still be caught off guard." Recalling the various sinister encounters in the tomb, Luo Zhu's heart shuddered. Xian nodded. To be capable of becoming one of the most feared occupation during the ancient times, soul oracles were anything but simple. Even though the Heaven's Path Xianxia had played a part as to why Sun Qiong could devour the soul oracle so easily, more importantly, the fellow's soul had already declined to a very weak state after innumerable years of existence. On top of that, he had wrestled control with Luo Zhu for such a long period of time, so it wouldn't be wrong to say that he was already wearied out. Thus, it wasn't surprising for him to be defeated so easily. But it was a different matter venturing into the tomb. It was impossible to know if there were more soul oracles in the tomb, and if so, their means and their strength. As such, this journey was fated to be a difficult one. After contemplating for a moment, Luo Zhu said, "I will make the preparations for the items required now, so let's set off in 3 days' time." Having explored the Soul Oracle tomb, he had a rough idea on the various objects that Soul Oracle feared. However, these objects weren't sold on the market, so he had to make them himself. "All right." Xian nodded in agreement. It worked with him as well since the cultivation techniques and battle techniques he'd asked the appraiser hall for hadn't arrived yet, and there were various matters he had to attend to here as well. As such, an interval of 3 days was perfect for him. "Then, I'll be taking my leave then." After chatting for a moment longer and knocking into place the various details regarding the visit to the Soul Oracle tomb, Luo Zhu clasped his fist and left. After Luo Zhu left, the room fell silent. With a reddened face, Hall Master Sai asked, "Xianxia, the bizarre heritage of the ancient Soul Oracle intrigues me as well, so I wish to take a look as well. Would you mind if I were to accompany you on the journey?" He failed to be of any use for the purchase of the soulless metal humanoid this time around, and yet he was requesting to be allowed to enjoy the rewards as well. As such, he felt a little embarrassed. However, the Soul Oracles had left an astounding legend in history, and as an appraiser, he didn't wish to miss a chance to come into contact with it in close distance. "Xianxia, I wish to take a look as well." Luo Qin hurriedly chirped in too. Since there were profits to be derived from it, the auction hall wanted to have a stake in it as well. The Soul Oracles specialized in the study of souls, and one could only render their services if one were to offer a huge amount in tribute to them. Thus, many Soul Oracles possessed a huge wealth. If he could obtain some of them, the auction hall would surely reap huge profits. "You wish to take a look as well?" Xian frowned for a moment before his eyes abruptly lit up. "Sure. However, I advise you all to prepare sufficient spirit stones beforehand. This way, if there are any treasures there, you can buy it on the spot." These two were definitely wealthy people. If there was anything of value in the tomb, he could sell it to them straight and earn some profits. Currently, gold coins were already useless to him. If he could obtain some more spirit stones, it would surely benefit both the cultivation progress of him and his students. "Yes." The duo nodded their heads in agreement. If anyone were to say such words, the both of them would definitely leave the other party searching the floor for their teeth. But after witnessing Xianxia's incredible capability that could eradicate even a soul oracle easily, they didn't dare to harbor such thoughts anymore. To be acknowledged by the harmonious stream of flowing goblets, discerning that Luo Zhu was possessed immediately, and not to mention, he was a master teacher. Given all of these, it was clear that the other party wasn't someone they could trifle with. After confirming the matter, Xianxia turned to Hall Master Sai and asked, "Right, may I trouble Hall Master Sai to bring me to your library? I wish to look through the books concerning soul oracles." Since he had come to the appraiser hall, naturally, he should also pay their library a visit as well. A deep knowledge on appraising and soul oracles might just serve him well in the future. That's not a problem at all. Hall Master Sai was still fearful as to what ridiculous request Xianxia might ask of him, but after hearing that it was just to look through the books, he heaved a sigh of relief and agreed with a smile. The young man before him possessed appraising capability above that of his. Even without permission, he also possessed the qualifications to enter the library. That would be great. Also, may I trouble Hall Master Sai to prepare living quarters for my students and Zhao Gongzi so that they may rest? Xianxia requested once more. Right after their long journey from Shenyuan Kingdom, they immediately visited the appraiser hall and attended the auction. At this moment, everyone was already feeling slightly fatigued. Hall Master Sai nodded his head and backed out. Not too long later, he led the group into a few quiet rooms. Right after entering one of the room, Xianxia immediately called Zhao Yue and the others to gather by his side. The Soul Oracle Tomb is a treacherous place, so you have to raise your cultivation as much as possible in these few days so that you all can ensure your own safety. Even a transcendent mortal Dan pinnacle, Luo Zhu, had fallen prey to the threats lying within the tomb. His students were only at Xianxia realm at the moment, thus putting them in a very vulnerable position. They had to raise their cultivation quickly, or else they would just end up as baggage. Feel free to use the spirit stones as you all like. Within 3 days, all of you must reach Zhizuan realm. Otherwise, I won't allow you to come with me. Throwing a bunch of spirit stones to each of them, Xianxia instructed. Previously, due to his lack of wealth, he felt reluctant to even use the spirit stones himself, and thus, his students had never really come into contact with them as well. However, after the harmonious stream of flowing goblets and the auction, Xianxia had more than 20,000 spirit stones in hand at the moment. With such wealth at hand, he wouldn't be stingy with his own students. Yes. After hearing their teacher's instruction, the group immediately clenched their jaws in determination. The breakthrough from Xianxia realm to Zhizuan was difficult. However, their teacher had already deciphered and analyzed the various cultivation problems they were facing and might face. In addition to that, they were also cultivating the cultivation technique their teacher tailored for them. With so many spirit stones in their hands now, if they were unable to accomplish such a simple task, they would be too ashamed to address Zhong Laoshe as their teacher. All right, go and cultivate. After which, Xianxia left the room and following behind Hall Master Sai, he arrived at the appraiser hall's library. Appraising covered a huge range of topics: culture, history, painting, antiques, equipment. The knowledge in the subject was unimaginably vast, and so, the appraiser hall's library had much more book than the libraries of other occupation. Upon stepping into it, Xianxia was immediately stunned by the immense size of the library. Compared to this library, the Qianwu Kingdom's book collection vault and even Shenyuan Kingdom's master teacher pavilion weren't worth of mentioning. Time to begin. Xianxia began collecting the books into the library of Heaven's Path. Hua-la-la-la. After spending nearly an entire day's time, he managed to duplicate all of the books in the library into the library of Heaven's Path. Returning back to his room, Xianxia realized that his body was fatigued and even staying awake was a chore. After traveling here from Shenyuan Kingdom, visiting the appraiser hall, challenging the harmonious stream of flowing goblets, and participating in the auction, Xianxia was extremely exhausted. His physical exhaustion didn't amount to much, but overuse of his eye of insight had depleted his soul depth. On top of that, he had collected a vast quantity of books in a short period of time, and this had left him completely fatigued. Thus, he went to sleep, and only on the second day's afternoon did he manage to recover. As long as he didn't hurt his foundation, his soul depth would naturally recover with sufficient rest. Let's see if I can find any clues from the soulless metal humanoid. After waking up and stretching his back, Xianxia flicked his wrist and a giant metal humanoid appeared in front of him. Ever since he bought it from the auction, he hadn't gotten a chance to examine it closely yet. Since he was free at the moment, he decided to give it a good look. Perhaps, he might be able to find some clues that could give him a deeper understanding of the soul oracles. The gold humanoid lay there quietly in front of Xianxia, no different from a lifeless puppet. After observing it for a moment, Xianxia was unable to discern anything peculiar about it. Thus, he placed his finger on the puppet. Flaws. Who? A book appeared in his mind. Flipping it open, Xianxia began reading through his contents and slowly, his eyebrows knitted together. A bizarre expression appeared on his face. This. How is this possible? Chapter 475. The Bizarre Soulless Metal Humanoid. A detailed introduction on the metal humanoid was written in the book. Grade 1 Soulless Metal Humanoid. A unique puppet crafted by soul oracles. It possesses its own consciousness and one can control it via fusing their soul into it. There's a spirit stone formation placed within its body which allows for its strength to be enhanced even without cultivating. If several metal humanoids were to be controlled simultaneously, it would form an incredible fighting prowess. Flaws. Possesses its own consciousness? What does that mean? Could it be that this fellow was still alive? Otherwise, how could it possibly possess its own consciousness? Xianxia continued reading on. Flaw 4. Its soul has been willingly stripped from its body, leaving behind only a sliver of inextinguishable flame of life within its body. Thus, it cannot regain sanity. Flaw 5. Could it be that? Suddenly recalling something, Xianxia's face darkened. Legend had it that the soulless metal humanoids were crafted using living human beings. Initially, Xianxia still held some doubts toward this matter as legends tended to be exaggerated. However, from the looks of it, it seemed like it was true. The main reason why an inextinguishable flame of life within the body was probably prevent the body from rotting. In essence, the metal humanoid was no different from a person in a vegetative state. While it was a corpse on the surface, its body still retained equal flexibility as it did when it was still alive. A person's body was intricately linked to the soul. Once a soul was lost, a person would die and their soul would gradually decay. But if that were to happen, how could one forge the metal humanoids? Putting everything aside, it would take some time to coat the entire body with metal. If body were to be completely dead, it would probably decay before one could succeed in the process. Clenching his fists tightly, Xianxia was angered by the cruelty of Soul Oracle when he suddenly noticed something and shook his head. That isn't it. Their souls were stripped from them with their consent. Could it be that these people had done so willingly? It was written in the book from the Library of Heaven's Path that these people had allowed for their own souls to be extracted. In other words, the soul oracles didn't force this fate on them. The original host of the metal humanoids had consented to the matter themselves. That was also why an inextinguishable flame of life could be left behind. Otherwise, if they were to struggle, there was an extremely high chance that the entire soul would be destroyed. If that were to happen, it would be impossible to preserve the body, less to say, forge a metal humanoid. After thinking for a moment, Xianxia deduced most of the matter. Legend had it that some influential powers groomed teams of loyal death soldiers who would lay down their lives for their masters. The original host of this metal humanoid was probably the same as well. Groomed by the soul oracles, the purpose of their lives was to turn into metal humanoids and serve them for all eternity. Since most large powers chose to groom death soldiers, there was no reason why the soul oracles wouldn't. Besides, this type of occupation specialized in subject of souls. Brainwashing a cultivator to have them accept having their souls taken away from them was also a possibility. Fearsome. Sinister. To be able to make someone willingly allow himself to be turned into a puppet, soul oracles were indeed fearsome. He was just considering whether he should capture a few of them to devour them so as to raise his cultivation. However, after learning about their callous means, he shuddered. It was best for him not to take the risk. Continuing on, he soon finished browsing through the books. There wasn't anything much noteworthy in the latter part of the content. Most of them were just on the flaws of the soulless metal humanoid and the method to drive them. It's a pity that I can't use it. After reading through the contents, Xianxia shook his head in disappointment. The soul oracles specialized in the study of souls, and their souls were capable of leaving their body to control the puppet. However, Xianxia wasn't capable of doing so. Throughout his cultivation, he had never come into contact with any books detailing the cultivation of one's soul. In other words, even though he had reached half-transcension already, his soul was still firmly integrated in his body. He couldn't operate the two of them separately. This was just like driving a car. In order to drive a car, one had to get onto the driver's seat first. If one's soul couldn't leave one's body, one wouldn't be able to enter the metal humanoid to drive it. In truth, Xianxia had been thinking that if he could control it, it would be equivalent to gaining a transcendent mortal realm death soldier. However, from the looks of it now, it seemed like it was nothing more than a dream. His soul was still locked in his physical body, unable to leave its restraints. In other words, this puppet was completely useless to him now. Admittedly, if he were to meet with danger, he could still use it as a shield. Cough, cough. After going through so much trouble, he only ended up buying a shield. Just the thought of it left him faint-headed. Keep. After taking another look, Xianxia verified that there was no important information to be derived from the soulless metal humanoid, and thus, he put it away within his storage ring. Then, flicking his wrist, a round ball appeared on his palm. It was the Celestial Designer mechanical container that Elder Chen had used to repay his debt. There's a flaw here, and here as well. Touching the round lead-like object, Xianxia infused his Xianxia into the various locations of the flaws detailed in the Library of Heaven's Path. There was only a total of 17 flaws, so it didn't take him too long to finish the job. Catcher! A mechanical sound suddenly echoed from the sphere in his hand. It sounded as though something was being unlocked. This. Xianxia leaped in shock. From the outer appearance, the artifact was no different from a lead ball. There wasn't the slightest gap or slit on it, causing him to suspect that it was just an ordinary ball of metal. He didn't expect that it could be opened. How exquisite! Lowering his head to take a look, Xianxia couldn't help but compliment. Could it be that this Celestial Designer Institute is something similar to the Beast Hall and Apothecary Guild, that it is somewhere celestial designers gather? Having duplicated the books throughout the entire appraiser hall, even though he hadn't assimilated all of the knowledge yet, he'd learned of another incredible occupation, celestial designer. This occupation didn't possess too much fighting prowess. Rather, the field they specialized in was machinery, and they belonged to the lower 9 paths. It was said that the most elusive secret weapon, the most complicated puppet, and the toughest armor all came from their design. Even though blacksmiths were capable of forging powerful equipment and tools as well, if one wanted to bring out a greater prowess from these equipment and tools, one had to find a celestial designer for a blueprint. Most top-notch experts would choose to hire both a celestial designer and a blacksmith simultaneously when they wanted to craft their personal weapon. The tools designed by celestial designers tended to contain innumerable tricks within them, making it difficult for one to guard against such tools. Taking Xianxia's spear for example, he had to fix the spear himself manually each time he wanted to wield it, making it an exceptionally troublesome process. However, if a blacksmith were to craft something based on the design of a celestial designer, it could end up being an object similar to a chopstick that could extend to more than a zhong long upon a light click. Another example was this Celestial Designer mechanical container. The flaws recorded in the Library of Heaven's Path were probably the weaker points at which it was linked at. Only when exerting pressure precisely at these points could one open it properly. Otherwise, no matter how powerful one could do nothing about it. And if one were to use excessive strength, one might end up ruining the object contained within it as well. What kind of valuable object was stored in this container? Curious, Xianxia pried the Celestial Designer mechanical container open. The moment he came into contact with this object, the Library of Heaven's Path immediately gave him the evaluation saying that Celestial Designer mechanical container, forged by the Celestial Designer Institute with complex mechanical systems. It can't be opened without knowing the specific sequences required to do so. It's likely that some important treasure is hidden within it. Since it was an artifact stored in such an exquisitely made container, it was unlikely for it to be anything ordinary. Opening the box, a thin layer of beast skin was placed within it. Xianxia couldn't tell what kind of beast the fabric was made of, but one thing that was certain was that it was extraordinarily durable. It was clear that it had been kept for innumerable years already, but yet it remained completely undamaged. He carefully lifted it up. Red dust, heaven ascending steps? What's this? 5 large words, red dust, heaven ascending steps, were written on the very top of the beast skin. Reading on, a poem appeared in Xianxia's sight. A cloud of red dust for 3,000 li, treading to the clear skies with a smile. Beyond the poem detailed the origin of the beast skin. The red dust heaven ascending steps originates from Sage Zhong, one of Xianxia's students. On the day which he successfully mastered the technique, shouldering a massive mountain, with a single step, he appeared 3,000 li away and soared into the vast skies. With the grace from Sage Zhong, our lineage is bestowed with the first scroll of heaven ascending steps to pass on to our descendants, so I hope that you can treasure this scroll. In order to prevent it from landing into the hands of outsiders, it's placed within a celestial designer mechanical container so that no one except for those who carry our bloodline are capable of opening it. It's a movement technique. Coming to a realization, Xianxia's eyes lit up. Given that this was the creation of one of Xianxia's students, the value of the battle technique was unimaginable. It was no wonder why it was placed within a celestial designer mechanical container. Under normal circumstances, this container could only be opened with a unique method that only those who bear the bloodline of their lineage knew of. Naturally, Xianxia had no idea what that method was. The only reason why he could open it was due to him finding the flaws of the object through the library of Heaven's Path. It was just like a typical security system in his previous life. One could unlock it if one knew the password, but even if one were to forget it, one could still ask for an administrator to help them unlock it. That was the privilege that Xianxia was using now. The library of Heaven's Path was able to see through the very core of the container, allowing Xianxia to strike accurately at its fundamental flaws. Thus, no matter how tightly sealed or intricate the container was, it didn't make a difference to him. I wonder if there are any flaws in the battle technique left behind by Xianxia's student. Holding the secret manual, Xianxia muttered flaws. It had already become a habit of his to check if there were any flaws in a battle technique. Since this skill was created by Xianxia's student, it must be of an unimaginable tier. However, no matter how powerful a skill was, it was impossible for it to be completely flawless. Who? A book appeared in Xianxia's mind. He hurriedly flipped it open to take a look. Only 42 flaws. Swiftly flipping through the book, Xianxia was astonished. As expected of a movement technique created by Xianxia's student, it was indeed a fearsome existence. Having only 42 flaws in a high-tier technique was truly a formidable accomplishment. In the battle techniques that Xianxia had flipped through previously, there were at least several hundred flaws. This was the reason why every single battle technique required more than 1,000 books to form the flawless Heaven's Path battle techniques. Yet, this battle technique only had 42 flaws. This clearly reflected how formidable a battle technique it was. If knowledge of it were to be leaked out, it would surely cause massive bloodshed. But there are still so many flaws in there, how am I supposed to learn it? It was one thing if Xianxia didn't know that there were any flaws in there, but now that he knew, his face immediately turned bitter. No matter how delicious a fruit is, once you know that there are worms within, it will be impossible to whet your appetite. Xianxia was too used to his cultivation techniques and battle techniques being flawless. Knowing that there were more than 40 flaws in the technique, even though he knew that it was a powerful skill, he was still unable to get past this and learn it. Right, Heaven's Path movement art is also a type of movement art. Perhaps I might be able to fuse them together. Heaven's Path movement art was a technique created by compiling innumerable movement technique secret manuals together. Even though it only consisted of the bare basics, it was the fundamentals to the very essence of the world. Perhaps, the both of them could be fused together to make up for the flaws of the heaven ascending steps. Compile. Placing the two books together, Xianxia willed. Who? A new book appeared. Xianxia immediately flipped through it. 3 flaws? Great. Even though there are still 3 left, it's still an acceptable number. Xianxia's eyes lit up. Even though there were still 3 flaws left, there wasn't any major mistakes to it anymore, making it worthwhile to learn. At the very most, he would just have to collect more movement technique secret manuals and try to fuse them together with the heaven ascending steps. Without any hesitation, Xianxia began browsing through the contents. With a single look, his eyes narrowed and his lips went pale. Red dust heaven ascending steps parallel heaven scroll. Could this be flight? Chapter 476. Song Chao wishes to guide Xianxia parallel heaven, in other words, to stand on equal footing with the heavens. Ordinary cultivators, even transcendent mortal experts, were incapable of flight. They still had to rely on aerial savage beasts to reach the skies. Yet, this cultivation technique claimed to be able to parallel the heavens. Didn't this mean that one would be capable of flight after learning the battle technique? Flight had always been one of the greatest dreams of humans. Be it his previous life or his current one, Xianxia had always possessed a yearning to soar through the skies. Thus, upon seeing the content, he couldn't help but feel agitated. A smile in the red dust, soaring alongside the wind. Parallel heaven scroll, upon mastery, grants one the ability of soaring in the skies, standing alongside the heavens. Xianxia swiftly continued reading on. Incredible. Reading the contents within carefully, Xianxia suddenly felt as though a new perspective to his understanding of cultivation had been unlocked. Flight was something that even transcendent mortal 9-dan experts were incapable of. Legend had it that only upon ascending beyond the transcendent mortal realm would one be capable of the feat, yet it was detailed here that as long as one cultivated properly, a transcendent mortal 1-dan, or perhaps even a half-transcension like him, would be able to step into the skies. Transcendent mortal cultivators strive to comprehend the essence of the world, thus granting them a certain level of control over their environment. By gathering this energy and molding it, one would be able to step on thin air and ascend to the skies. This was the main concept behind the scroll. If it were any other half-transcension cultivator, they would definitely be unable to comprehend such a deep cultivation technique. However, Xianxia was different. Given that most of the flaws had been resolved by the Library of Heaven's Path and the deep knowledge Xianxia contained in his head, even though there were some intricacies here and there, they weren't sufficient to impede his progress. When one falls into the water, one can ascend upward by stepping against the water. Even though water is lacking its solidity, it is still able to make one float, and air is capable of the same feat as well. As long as one finds the correct method to driving the energy of the world, stepping against the air to float one isn't a difficult task at all. This is also what it means to mold energy with one's cultivation. After an unknown period of time, Xianxia breathed out a mouthful of turbid air and his eyes lit up. Incredible. To think that there would be such a formidable battle technique in the world. As expected of Kongsha's student, Sage Zhong's comprehension of the heavens had reached an unthinkable level. All of the battle techniques and cultivation technique he had seen before paled far too much before it. There was no basis of comparison at all. The scroll had opened an entirely new world before him, granting him a much deeper understanding of battle techniques and cultivation techniques. It's a pity that this is only the first scroll. I wonder how profound the latter ones might be. Xianxia sighed in lamentation. After he finished browsing through it, he came to a realization. This red dust heaven ascending steps was only an introduction formula. It was only suited for transcendent mortal cultivators, and after going beyond that realm, it would become redundant. That was because beyond transcendent mortal, one would gain the capability of flight. Even if one had mastered the red dust heaven ascending steps, at best, it would only augment one's flight speed by a small bit. I should give it a try. After resting for a moment, Xianxia reorganized the parallel heaven scroll before sitting down to drive his Xianxia according to the formula detailed in the scroll. Even though he was still at half-transcension only, he already possessed a certain level of control over his surroundings. At this very moment, all of his attention and energy throughout his body was focused at a single point. Xianxia's meditating body gradually lifted up, as though a balloon rising up from the bottom of the water. Putong. But barely after 3 breaths, he immediately fell down and began panting heavily. What fearsome expenditure! Xianxia's face turned pale. Just to hold himself in the air for 3 breaths, he had sapped his Xianxia dry. This red dust heaven ascending steps sounded incredible, and being capable of flying in the air was also extremely incredible, but the Xianxia expenditure was simply way too exaggerated. If he could only sustain it for such a short period of time, he would come falling down to earth before he could do anything in the air. Looks like this is still a rather useless battle technique for me at the moment. Xianxia was disappointed. He thought that he would be able to soar into the heavens right after mastering it, but from the looks of it, he was expecting way too much. A flight that could only be sustained for 3 seconds was futile. No matter how high he could soar, after 3 seconds, he would come crashing back to earth due to lack of Xianxia. What in the world was this? He'd learned such a formidable battle technique. But in the end, it was completely useless. He could reach even greater heights just by jumping. On top of that, he would come crashing down right after 3 seconds. At this very moment, Xianxia made up his mind not to use this technique in public so as to not embarrass himself. Grabbing a few spirit stones, Xianxia frenziedly absorbed the spiritual energy within them. It took him an hour before he fully recovered. In the end, the main problem was that his cultivation was too low, resulting in him possessing insufficient Xianxia to upkeep with his expenditure. If he could bring his cultivation realm up a few notches, it might become much easier than him to execute the technique. After studying the technique for a moment longer, Xianxia evaluated that he wasn't suited to using the battle technique at the moment, so he stretched his back and walked out. Young master, there's a fellow outside insisting on meeting you. I've already chased him away 3 times, but he still shows up every single day. Should I inform Elder Jin so that he can toss the other party out? Right after walking out, Sun Qiong hurriedly walked up and spoke with an annoyed expression on his face. Someone is insisting on meeting me. Xianxia was taken aback. He didn't know anyone here, so why would anyone come here to look for him? I don't know who he is either. I've asked him several times, but he simply refuses to speak. Just looking at his arrogant face makes me feel so infuriated. Sun Qiong harumphed. Arrogant. Xianxia felt even more perplexed. There was someone in the world who could be more arrogant than this big brother Qiong here. It was truly incredible that someone could annoy him to such a point. Is that person still around? Intrigued, Xianxia asked. Yes. Lead me to him. Xianxia waved his hands. He's at the lounge. Sun Qiong pointed. The living quarters that Hall Master Sai assigned them was an independent residence with 7 to 8 bedrooms and an average-sized lounge. Stepping into the lounge, Xianxia saw a young man sitting on one of the seats. An elder stood behind the young man, and the aura shrouding him was vague and barely discernible, revealing his extraordinary cultivation. It was the young man and the elder of Suite 23. Seated in the lounge, Song Chao felt a little frustrated. That day, when the item he wanted was intercepted by Suite 1, he had felt extremely displeased. Thus, he secretly had his men look into the matter, and he finally managed to track the other party down. The one who was with Hall Master Sai then was a master teacher named Xianxia. As for his specific identity, there wasn't sufficient information to make any conclusion. Upon hearing that the other party was a master teacher, Song Chao immediately heaved a sigh of relief. If the other party was of any other identity, he wouldn't be in a good position to do anything. But for master teacher, as a 4-star master teacher, he definitely ranked within the top in Myriad Kingdom Alliance. He didn't think that a fellow who wasn't even 20 yet could be a match for him. Master teachers viewed hierarchy very strictly. Since the other party's ranking was lower than him, this matter would be easy to solve. Thus, he excitedly came knocking on the other party's door, but in the end, all 3 trips of his ended in futile. And more importantly, that butler of his even viewed him as a scammer and tried to chase him out. If not in consideration of his identity, he would have long slapped the other party to death. Young master, do you think that he'll sell it to us? Seeing the frustration in the young master's eyes, the elder couldn't help but ask. The reason why they made the long journey here was due to hearing rumors regarding the soulless metal humanoid. Yet, the young master ended up being outbid on the auction. Thus, he looked into the background of the buyer and came knocking in hopes of being able to buy it down. But given how the other party bought it at an exorbitant price, why would he be willing to sell it to them? Humph, he doesn't have a choice in the matter. As long as he's a master teacher, I have a way to make him sell it to me. Grabbing the armrest of the chair, Song Chao's face turned frosty. Does young master have an idea in mind? The elder's eyes lit up. Of course. As a 4-star master teacher, I'll definitely be able to easily see the flaws in his cultivation. As long as I offer his guidance, he'll definitely hand it over obediently. Song Chao's mouth curled up. It was impossible for a cultivator to possess no flaws with his cultivation at all. As a 4-star master teacher, he was more than confident of guiding a small figure who wasn't even 20 yet on his cultivation. The moment he helps the other party achieve a breakthrough, the other party would surely be filled with gratitude for him. Putting aside the soulless metal humanoid, it was even possible for the other party to kowtow on the spot and beg him to take him in as his student. That's true. After a moment of silence, the elder slowly nodded his head in agreement. Master teachers did possess the capability and charisma to do so. The reason why he willingly followed the young master wasn't just because of the debt of gratitude he owed to the young master's clan. More importantly, it was because of this. Following behind a master teacher was an opportunity in itself. Listening more to the words of a master teacher could help one to avoid straying on the wrong path on one's cultivation, allowing one's cultivation to rise swiftly. Young master, they are the ones who wish to meet you. Just as the elder was wondering whether they would be able to meet Xianxia today, the butler's sound echoed and 2 men walked into the lounge. The one walking in front didn't look too old, seemingly below 20. From the looks of it, he must be that legendary Xianxia. You're looking for me. Upon stepping into the lounge, Xianxia's confusion deepened. He had never met these 2 before. What business could they have with him? That's right. I am 4-star master teacher Song Chao. Song Chao stood up and gestured grandly. 4-star master teacher. Xianxia froze for a moment before quickly clasping his fist. Oh, Xianxia pays respect to Song Chao. He didn't think that this fellow who didn't seem as though he was 30 yet would actually be a 4-star master teacher. As expected of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, it was indeed filled with talents. UN. Seeing that the other party's attitude was not bad, Song Chao nodded his head in satisfaction. He was just about to bring out the disposition of an elder and guide the other party when a set of footsteps sounded outside. Xianxia, you're finally out. All of the items you asked for have already been gathered. Hall Master Sai walked in. Upon walking into the room, Hall Master Sai saw Song Chao and clasped his fist. Sai Xiaoyu pays respect to Song Chao. Hall Master Sai had met Song Chao over the past 2 days, while the latter was trying to look into Xianxia's affairs. After greeting the latter, Hall Master Sai immediately turned his attention to Xianxia and delightfully passed a storage ring over to him with a fawning look. You've gathered everything? So fast. Didn't you say that it'll take 3 days? It has only been slightly more than 2 days, but you're already done. Taking the storage ring, Xianxia swept through the contents within with his mind and realized that it was filled entirely with cultivation technique and battle technique manuals. In total, they added up to more than 10,000 books. There were cultivation technique manuals on Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan, 2 Dan, and 3 Dan. But just like what Hall Master Sai said before, the quantity of the books reduced as the level of the cultivation technique manuals went up. But even so, it was already a huge harvest. From the looks of it, he should be able to compile a perfect Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan Prolonged Longevity Realm cultivation technique. You did well. Smiling slightly, Xianxia nodded his head in commendation. Since I've already given you my word, it's only right for me to do it to the best of my abilities. Hall Master Sai replied in delight after receiving the commendation. After which, with a flick of his wrist, he took out an emblem and said, Xianxia, I've reported the matter regarding how you passed the harmonious stream of flowing goblets to the headquarters, and this is the 5-star appraiser emblem that they have bestowed to you. 5-star emblem. Taking the emblem from the other party's hand, as expected, Xianxia saw 5 bright stars on the surface of the emblem. This almost felt like a dream. To think that he would become a 5-star appraiser just by clearing the harmonious stream of flowing goblet. Wasn't the appraiser examination a little too easy? Chapter 477. Song Chao wishes to guide Xianxia. The harmonious stream of flowing goblet is a test for 5-star appraisers, and it's of extreme difficulty. Under usual circumstances, one would have passed the test just by successfully appraising a single object. Yet, You managed to appraise 3 of them, and even to the extent of having the harmonious stream of flowing goblet operation table acknowledge you as its owner. If you can't even qualify as a 5-star appraiser with that. Seeing through Xianxia's thoughts, Hall Master Sai smiled bitterly. Honestly speaking, in his view, even the rank of a 5-star appraiser seemed to be an understatement of the other party's ability. Just through his appraisal, he could make those invaluable artifacts acknowledge him as their master. That is a skill that only appraisers of 6-star and above possessed. But of course, the Honghai City Appraiser Hall wasn't of sufficient rank to apply for a 6-star emblem. Does appraiser have no demand on one's cultivation? Xianxia couldn't help but ask. Master teacher, apothecary, beast tamer, physician. All of these upper 9 paths occupations were very demanding on one's cultivation. Without a sufficiently high cultivation realm, no matter how capable one was in the occupation, one would still be unable to progress through the ranks. It was just like how even though Xianxia caused such a huge uproar in Qianwu Kingdom Physician Guild back then, the Myriad Kingdom Alliance Physician Guild was only able to grant him the position of an elder, and his ranking was still pending to date. To be suddenly given the ranking of a 5-star appraiser just like that, wasn't it making a little too light of the occupation? The main responsibility of an appraiser is to appraise artifacts. As such, there isn't any specific requirement to one's cultivation. In truth, most middle 9 paths and lower 9 paths occupations work in the same way as well. Only the occupations of the upper 9 paths have such rigorous restrictions on one's cultivation. Hall Master Sai explained. Xianxia nodded his head. While the duo was chatting so happily, Song Chao's vision was turning dark and he nearly fainted from anger. No matter what, he was a 4-star master teacher, a pinnacle existence within the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Putting aside how that Xianxia ignored him right after greeting him. To think that Hall Master Sai would do the same as well. Furthermore, for the 2 of them to be chatting so happily in his presence, disregarding his existence. Wasn't this blatant disregard for him? Previously, he thought that the butler must have a screw loose to have tried to attempt to chase him out. But now, from the looks of it, it was probably the owner's influence. To think that the 2 of you would disregard a 4-star master teacher and chat so happily together like that. Do you all not even know basic courtesy? HMPH. Unable to hold it in any more, Song Chao flung his sleeves and tilted his face upward. Placing his hands behind his back, he spoke furiously. Xianxia and Hall Master Sai, a 4-star master teacher is in your presence. Is this how you treat your guests? But before he could finish his words, the elder beside him said awkwardly, Young master, they have already left. Left? Taken aback, Song Chao quickly turned his head around, only to see Xianxia and Hall Master Sai walking out of the room with a smile on their faces. Having obtained the cultivation technique and battle technique manuals he had been waiting for, Xianxia was eager to compile the Heaven's Path Divine Art to make the breakthrough to Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan. Thus, how could he possibly be willing to stay here a single moment longer? You! Song Chao was on the verge of spewing blood. It was one thing to disregard his presence, but to leave without saying a word. It was clear that they had forgotten about him, a 4-star master teacher. Damn it! Were they simply too brave, or was he really that insignificant? Hold it right there! Bellowing furiously, his figure blurred and as though an apparition, he flitted a distance of several dozen meters in an instant and blocked the path of the duo. His cultivation was immediately revealed as soon as he used his cultivation technique. Transcendent Mortal 3 Dan Yin-Yang Realm Primary Stage. Xianxia, do you know that there is a fatal flaw with your cultivation technique, and your life is hanging by a thread? Knowing that violence should be the last option, Song Chao suppressed his anger and donned the disposition befitting of an expert. My cultivation technique. The cultivation technique Xianxia practiced was derived from the Library of Heaven's Path, so how could there possibly be a flaw in it? But a moment later, Xianxia immediately comprehended the situation. Flaws in one's cultivation technique were an unavoidable problem for all cultivators. The other party was probably trying to use words to hoodwink him before using some method to find a flaw in his cultivation technique so as to offer him some pointer. There were some master teachers who used this method to have the person they had set their eyes on to have him acknowledge them as his teacher. In fact, Xianxia had done so himself as well. Back then, Wang Ying fell for the exact same trick. That's right. If you wish to overcome your current realm, I can lend you my assistance. If so, you can avoid many unwanted hassles. Seeing that Xianxia was hooked, Song Chao felt gleeful. With an earnest expression on his face, he was just about to randomly spout some common problems in cultivation so further enhance his credibility when the young man before him stared at him with a frown. Song Shi, do you feel an aching pain in your Huihai acupoint and frailty in your Baikai acupoint that results in you being unable to focus your attention? I'm talking about your problems, so you should. Song Chao was just about to reprimand the other party when he suddenly realized something and his body froze. How do you know about it? Recently, during his cultivation, he found that he was unable to gather Junqi in his Huihai acupoint, and whenever he did so, he would experience a sharp pain as though someone was tearing it apart. His Baikai acupoint also felt a little feeble, thus making it hard for him to concentrate. This was precisely the reason why he took this trip out, unintentionally heard news regarding the soulless metal humanoid, and came over here. Otherwise, as a talented 4-star master teacher, how could he have the spare effort to be wandering around? Not only so, when you cultivate, do you feel a numbness in your left thigh and your right leg often convulses? Xianxia continued. Aye. Song Chao's face slowly turned pale. That was spot on. If I'm not mistaken, your cultivation technique should be supreme art of heaven's frost. There's no mistake with your cultivation method, and your cultivation technique, at spirit intermediate tier, is rather powerful as well. However, it's a pity that, 3 months ago, in an attempt to forcibly raise your cultivation, an error occurred which resulted in your meridians being blocked by the frost element of your cultivation technique. The direct result of that is numbness in your left thigh, convulse of your right leg, frailty in the Baikai acupoint, and sharp pain in the Huihai acupoint. Xianxia analyzed calmly. This fellow had just executed his battle technique to block their way, and this had caused a corresponding book to be compiled within the library of Heaven's Path. Then, is there a way to resolve this problem? Song Chao asked anxiously. The other party had described his current physical condition accurately. However, there wasn't a clear solution for the blockage of his acupoints. Even his teacher, a half 5-star master teacher, was incapable of solving the problem, so he could only let it recover gradually with time. Thus, Song Chao had given up all hope and decided to simply wait it out. Yet, this young man here had identified all of his symptoms clearly. How in the world did he manage to do it? 5,000 spirit stones. I'll help you solve your problem and achieve a breakthrough. Xianxia spoke impassively. 5,000. Song Chao hesitated. If I'm not mistaken, you should have consulted a few other people on your problem, but they are all helpless before it. If you don't use my method, you'll need at least an entire year to recover. I'm sure you know the consequences of not cultivating for an entire year. Xianxia was in no hurry at all. All right, here is the spirit stones. I beseech Xianxia for your guidance. Soon, Song Chao gritted his teeth and replied. With a flick of his wrist, a bunch of spirit stones fell to the floor. In an instant, dense spiritual energy gushed into the air. UN. Xianxia nodded his head in satisfaction. He swiftly kept the spirit stones in his storage ring before saying, the cure is extremely simple. You just have to drive your Junqi along this meridian. To offer pointers to even 4-star master teachers? Exactly how highly ranked is this Xianxia? Hall Master Sai widened his eyes in shock. He already knew that Xianxia was extraordinary, but still, he didn't expect it to such a degree. This Song Chao was a 4-star master teacher, and yet, his cultivation errors could still be pointed in an instant. On top of that, Xianxia was able to solve the problem that had plagued the former for such a long period of time. Through this, it could be deduced that Xianxia's capability had reached an astounding level. The body of the elder in the lounge froze, and his hyperventilation nearly acted up. The young master had gone over to offer guidance to the other party in hopes of winning the other party's gratitude and earn the soulless metal humanoid. Yet, in the blink of an eye, he became the one being guided instead? And on top of that, to be paying money as well. What was with this sudden twist? Even though he had witnessed the sight with his own eyes, he still felt as though he was going mad. All right, just cultivate using the method I just told you and your affliction will definitely be solved within 3 days. While the duo was shocked speechless, Xianxia finished his guidance. Thank your Xianxia for your guidance. After memorizing the method the other party spoke of, Song Chao felt awed. He subconsciously clasped his fist in gratitude. UN. Replying with a nod, Xianxia continued walking on. Any other master teacher would definitely find it hard to determine the cause of Song Chao's affliction. However, once the cause was determined, solving it became much easier. Given how the other party was a 4-star master teacher, he should be more than capable to tell whether what Xianxia said was true or not. Young master, aren't you going to ask for the soulless metal humanoid from him? Why did you end up paying him instead? After Xianxia left, the elder hurriedly walked up. Ah! Song Chao was suddenly jolted from his trance. For some reason, when he was listening to the other party's analysis and guidance previously, he unknowingly fell into a state of trance. This is impartation of heaven's will? He used impartation of heaven's will on me, and I actually fell for it. Upon realizing something, Song Chao's mouth twitched and he nearly fainted on the spot. Even though the other party's analysis and guidance was spot on, logically speaking, he shouldn't have obeyed every single word the other party said, going to the extent of even paying money. The only logical explanation for it was that the other party had used impartation of heaven's will on him. That was an ability unique to master teachers. As long as one's words were true, one would be able to stimulate the Xianxia within the bodies of others and induce unconditional trust within others, making others follow one's orders obediently. His original intention was to offer guidance to the other party, and yet, he ended up falling for the other party's impartation of heaven's will instead. Song Chao felt as though he was going insane. However, as a 4-star master teacher, Song Chao's soul depth had reached 12.0. For the other party to be able to induce unconditional trust in him through the impartation of heaven's will, didn't that mean that the other party's soul depth was higher than his? Are you for real? On top of that, just impartation of heaven's will by itself is insufficient. More importantly, one has to have the acknowledgement of the predecessors. Those who have been acknowledged of the predecessors of the master-teacher pavilion will possess a disposition that induces deference in others. Could it be that this fellow had earned the acknowledgement of even more predecessors than me? Song Chao's fist clenched tightly together once more. Master teachers were exceptionally sensitive to this kind of disposition, thus making it much easier for them to listen to the words of acknowledged master teachers. This was also why it was said that even without the master teacher emblem, those who had been acknowledged by the predecessors could be easily recognized by their peers. Song Chao was an incredible young genius who had been recognized by 9 predecessors during the ritual, and as such, his sect had sent him to participate in the master teacher tournament. Yet, such a figure was sent into a trance just by a single word. Didn't this mean that the other party was acknowledged by even more predecessors than him? But how was this possible? Where in the world did this fellow come from? How could he be so formidable? Song Chao was dumbfounded. Chapter 478, Formation Master Guild. Young Master, have you asked about the soulless metal humanoid yet? Seeing the young master's slightly trembling body, the elder knew that the young master would surely lose his sanity if they were to continue discussing this topic. Thus, he hurriedly changed the subject. I forgot. Song Chao's body swayed weakly. He only had time to say a single sentence before the other party began pointing out the various symptoms he was suffering from. After that, he fell to the onslaught of words and lost himself. Putting aside the soulless metal humanoid, he didn't even manage to speak much. How was he supposed to ask the question when he was in a trance? Then, I'll try asking. The elder said slowly. Go on. Be careful. After hesitating for a moment, Song Chao nodded his head. He was a little fearful at the moment already. He was scared that if he were to go over again, he might be bewitched by the other party's words once more. Thus, it might be wiser to send his subordinate over instead. But, given that the other party was able to give him a lesson via the impartation of heaven's will and determine the root of his problem, the other party's ranking as a master teacher was definitely above his. It was natural for a person of such capability to want to retain the soulless metal humanoid to study it. If so, how could the other party possibly give it up to him? Yes. The elder nodded his head. He hurriedly walked over to Xianxia, who had already traveled a very far distance away during this period of time. Xianxia, we wish to buy the soulless metal humanoid. May I know if you're interested in selling it? Our young master is willing to offer 2 half 5-star master teacher tutelage jade tokens for it. 40,000 spirit stones. Xianxia came to a stop. This price is already extremely high. Even our young master only has 3 of such tutelage jade token. Wait a moment, what did you say? The elder thought that Xianxia would reject him outright, but contrary to his expectation, the other party tossed out a price so candidly. Taken aback, the elder attempted to verify the matter by asking, "You're saying that you're willing to sell it to us at 40,000 spirit stones?" Who? Before he could finish his words, a shadow flashed across his eyes and a soulless metal humanoid appeared on the floor. If you can produce the spirit stones, you can take the metal humanoid away. I won't be accepting any tutelage jade token. If you don't have the money to pay up, I'll have to ask of you to leave. Xianxia waved his hands. He was in a rush to compile and study the Heaven's Path divine art, and he didn't want to waste any time dawdling here. Since Xianxia had already examined the soulless metal humanoid already, it was of no use to him anymore. Rather to keeping it with him, he might as well sell it for a profit. So simple. Standing behind, Xianxia had thought that the elder would surely fail. Never in his dreams did he expect the matter would be so simple. If only he'd known that the fellow had the intention to sell it, he wouldn't have tried to act cool and insist on offering guidance to the other party. In the end, not only did he fail in his deed, he became the one being taught instead. He had truly embarrassed himself greatly today. Xianxia felt frenzied. As a master teacher, he was always able to perceive the intentions and meaning behind the actions of others. Yet, this fellow before him didn't seem to obey any common sense at all. It felt as though he was knocking his head on a rock. Every interaction with the other party simply left him faint-headed. Xianxia, are you serious in selling the soulless metal humanoid to me for 40,000 spirit stones? Unable to hold back his agitation, Xianxia stepped forward. If you can't afford it, the deal is off. Putting away the metal humanoid into his storage ring, Xianxia prepared to leave once more. I'll buy it. With a reddened face, Xianxia hurriedly spoke up. Voila! After saying those words, a mountain of spirit stones immediately appeared before everyone's eyes. It totaled up to exactly 40,000 yuan. The metal humanoid is yours then. Taking the spirit stones, Xianxia tossed the metal humanoid to the other party's side, turned around, and left. Thank you, Xianxia. Grabbing over the soulless metal humanoid, Xianxia quickly placed it into his storage ring, fearful that the other party might change his mind. However, right after he kept the item, he suddenly froze. An urge to bash his head into the nearest pillar suddenly gripped him. I fell for his trick again. My 40,000 spirit stones. How could he not even have tried to haggle with the other party? Clearly, he had fallen for the other party's impartation of heaven's will once more, resulting in him taking out the sum immediately. Thus were his total savings throughout the years. To think that he would be sapped dry by the other party in an instant. Why did it have to be so damned? What kind of monster was the other party? Congratulations, young master. You finally managed to obtain the soulless metal humanoid. The elder clasped his fist. Scram! Xianxia was already in a very bad mood, and when he heard the congratulations, he immediately erupted. Kang, all right. Perplexed, the elder scratched his head doubtfully. What was wrong with the young master? Did he damage his brain somehow? While relishing in the joy of having just earned 40,000 spirit stones with little to no effort, Xianxia returned back to his room. With a flick of his wrist, several rows of bookshelves appeared before him. With this, he wouldn't have to worry about having insufficient spirit stones for his cultivation in the short term. The pressing matter at hand was for him to read through more books so that he could raise his cultivation. Sliding his finger across the rows of books, identical books appeared in his head. Soon, all of the cultivation technique and battle technique manuals that Hall Master Sai had collected were replicated within the library of Heaven's Path. Compile. Placing all of the transcendent mortal one Dan prolonged longevity realm cultivation techniques together, Xianxia willed. Who? An entirely new book appeared before Xianxia's eyes. Picking it up, he began flipping through it. Transcendent mortal, also known as surmounting mortality and mortal metamorphosis, refers to the stage where one evolves beyond the limits of mortals. One's level of existence will be increased significantly. In order to transcend mortality, one has to abstain from inferior mortal sustenance and feast on the spiritual energy in the air instead. Those who consume material sustenance are intelligent but die. Those who consume spiritual energy are intelligent and lasting. The content of the book appeared in Xianxia's eyes. After an unknown period of time, he breathed out a mouthful of turbid air and opened his eyes. He had finished comprehending the essence of the transcendent mortal one Dan Heaven's Path divine art, and he was ready to cultivate it now. Let's begin. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, he flicked his wrist and a spirit stone appeared in his hand. Driving his Xianxia according to the method detailed in the cultivation technique, he began absorbing spiritual energy from the spirit stone. Catcher. 2 breaths later, the spirit stone in his hand was reduced to powder. This. Xianxia's face twitched. Spirit stones were a natural product of the world. They contain spiritual energy and each of them are crystal clear. Going by logic, it should be exceptionally tough. Why did it simply crumble all of a sudden? Lowering his head to assess the situation, a bizarre expression soon surfaced. The spiritual energy within has been fully absorbed. Looking at the crumbled spirit stone on the floor, it was completely white, reminiscent of ashes. Clearly, the spiritual energy within it had been devoured completely. This. How many spirit stones will I require to make the breakthrough to transcendent mortal one Dan? Xianxia felt faint-headed. He thought that several hundred spirit stones would be sufficient for him to reach transcendent mortal one Dan. Given that he had several 10,000 in his possession now, it should be a piece of cake. However, it seemed like he was severely underestimating his consumption rate. Transcendent mortal meant evolving beyond mortality. His body had been tempered by Heaven's Path Xianxia, making it far superior to that of ordinary humans. As such, the difficulty in him making the leap from a mortal to the next realm was 100 times greater than them as well. It was easy to expand a ditch of 1 meter radius wide by twofold, but expanding an ocean by twofold was exponentially more difficult. That was exactly the case with him. Nourished by the Heaven's Path Xianxia, his physical body and soul had undergone a qualitative change, making him invincible among his fellow peers. However, this also made it harder for him to make the final breakthrough. If I were to absorb them one by one, it would just be a matter of time before I died of exhaustion. Xianxia had several 10,000 spirit stones at the moment. It should be sufficient to fuel his breakthrough, but the spiritual energy contained within these low-tier spirit stones was limited. On top of that, his consumption was extremely great. If he were to go on like that, having to pause his cultivation to replace a broken spirit stone every 2 breaths, it would be incredibly inconvenient. Who knows how long it would take for him to reach transcendent mortal realm if he had to do it that way. Even if there was sufficient water in a bottle to alleviate one's thirst, if one could only drink a drop at a time, one would still die of dehydration. In other words, Xianxia had to find a way to extract the spiritual energy from the spirit stones so that he could cultivate continuously without pause.
Formation.
Frowning, an occupation suddenly appeared in Xianxia's mind. Holding a spirit stone one at a time to cultivate wouldn't work out at all. There was only one way if Xianxia wanted hundreds or even thousands of spirit stone to provide him spiritual energy simultaneously.
Formation.
Back then, after eradicating the Lin clan, Xianxia had read through several books regarding formations and learned that some of the more formidable spirit-gathering formations were capable of extracting spiritual energy from spirit stones and gather them in the area. If he had this kind of formation, he could simply put spirit stones in it and the spiritual energy within them would be extracted automatically. If so, his cultivation would become much smoother. I should go and look for some formations. Xianxia stood up. Along with the rise in his cultivation, his requirement for spiritual energy would increase exponentially as well. Even if he had sufficient spirit stones, cultivation would become terribly inefficient. Walking out of the room, Xianxia went to look for Hall Master Sai. Hall Master Sai, may I know if there is a Formation Master Guild in Honghai City? If so, could you take me over, please? Hall Master Sai looked at Xianxia and asked, as a large commercial city, there's no reason why Honghai City wouldn't have a Formation Master Guild. Does Xianxia intend to purchase formation plates in preparation for the trip to the Soul Oracle Tomb? Formation plates were a miniaturization of a formation and could be easily carried around with one. Even if one weren't a formation master, one could still activate it by infusing one's Xianxia into it. As such, it was one of the most sought-after product in the Formation Master Guild. The trip to the Soul Oracle Tomb was filled with dangers. With a formation plate in hand, Xianxia would gain another assurance on his survivability. Formation plate? Right, I also wish to see if there's anything suitable there to buy. Xianxia nodded. If he could find a spirit-gathering formation plate, he could easily carry it around and use it whenever he needed it. That would surely prove to be convenient. I am old buddies with the head of the Formation Master Guild, Guild Master Zhang Jingfeng. He has the highest tiered formation plates in the entire Honghai City. Allow me to take you there. I'm certain I can get you something you'll be satisfied with. Hall Master Sai said. I'll be depending on Hall Master Sai then. Knowing that this was a gesture of goodwill from the other party, Xianxia didn't turn it down. Due to the unique role that the appraiser hall played in Honghai City, it was located at the center of the various guilds. As such, it wasn't too far away from the Formation Master Guild. In just 10 minutes, they had already arrived at their destination. Previously, at Qianwu Kingdom, Xianxia had paid the Formation Master Guild a visit to gather the books contained within. Compared to the magnificent infrastructure standing before him at this very moment, the Qianwu Kingdom felt nothing more than a crude shack. The gates to the guild were tall and majestic, and an 8 trigram was imprinted on it, creating a profound and mysterious air to it. Stepping into the guild, Xianxia immediately felt the air around him change. The temperature was comfortable, the air was slightly moist, and the surroundings was concentrated in spiritual energy. It felt as though one had walked into a garden in spring, and an indescribable sensation of relaxation and tranquility swept over him. This. Xianxia blinked his eyes. It was already late autumn, and winter was able to set in soon. How could this area be warm as though spring? The Formation Master Guild has set up a formation here so that it'll be permanently spring in here. Seeing Xianxia's expression, Hall Master Sai understood what Xianxia was thinking of and stroked his beard. Don't worry, this formation will only put one in a comfortable position. It doesn't possess any offense capability, so there's no need to worry. To set up such an elaborate formation just for comfort. As expected of the Formation Master Guild. Xianxia commented in awe. To control such a huge formation so precisely such that it was limited to the interiors of the guild was a difficult feat. The Myriad Kingdom Alliance Formation Guild was indeed formidable. Just this formation itself was probably grade 3 pinnacle or perhaps even grade 4. Chapter 479. Give me a moment. The vast lounge was filled with a huge crowd walking to and fro. There was a long queue in front of the front counter. Formation plates, weapon, and pill, these 3 were known as the necessities for a journey. However, the variety and number of formation plates that the Formation Master Guild sold every day was limited, so there was often a long queue of people hoping to buy just one. Paying respects to Hall Master Sai. Walking around the crowd, before Xianxia and Hall Master Sai could reach the reception, a young man had already walked forward to welcome them. I have some matters to ask of Guild Leader Zhang. I'll be troubling you to lead the way. Hall Master Sai waved his hands. My teacher is currently in the midst of inscribing a formation plate. I'll lead you there now. The young man smiled and led the way. Walking along the stairs up to the 2nd floor, it didn't take long before they arrived at a room. Formation plates of all sizes were placed around the room, and at the very center sat an elder who was busy carving something. A formation required a formation core and formation flags to be placed in a manner that complemented the geographical terrain to maximize its might. As such, setting one up and activating it were extremely troublesome processes, and only those who were well versed in it were capable of the feat. Formation plates were much simpler in comparison. One just had to inscribe a miniaturized version of the formation on the unique round plate, and just by infusing one's Xianxia into it, one would be able to trigger it. But formation plates had two major flaws to them. Firstly, due to its size, it was unable to harmonize with the surroundings, and thus, it typically only contained around half the might of an ordinary formation. Secondly, every usage would result in immense damage to the formation plate. As such, it was limited by the number of uses, and while 5 times was the maximum, it was often the case that the formation plates broke after the first use. While the flaws couldn't be said to be insignificant, its benefits still far outweighed its disadvantages. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people queuing up for it. Its greatest strength lay in that anyone, even those who were completely unknowledgeable in formations, could use it. Secondly, it was convenient to carry around, and it could be activated quickly and easily. One just had to infuse Xianxia into it, thus making it a valuable tool in times to danger. The elder in the room seemed to be in his 60s, but there wasn't the slightest trace of facial hair on his face. His large hand was holding a small carving knife, and he was carefully carving a plate. The creation of a formation plate was an extremely complicated process. After all, what one was trying to do was to condense a massive formation into a round plate around the size of one's palm. The difficulty of the task was obvious with just a single thought. With the slightest mistake, the inscribing process might very possibly end in failure. Inscribing formation plates was somewhat similar to forging pills. Even 4-star formation masters couldn't claim to be able to succeed all the time. The creation of every single plate was an extremely effort and time-consuming process. "Teacher, Hall Master Sai is here." Walking into the room, the young man bowed. Putting down the carving knife, the elder raised his head, looked at his old friend, and smiled. "I've always been the one to look for you in the past. What brings you here today?" "I have something that I have to request of Guild Leader Zheng this time." Hall Master Sai nodded before introducing, "This is Xianxia. He hopes to purchase a formation plate, and after some consideration, I felt that the items you sold here are the most reliable of them all, so I brought him over." "Xianxia." Guild Leader Zhang stood up and assessed Xianxia with a doubtful expression. He knew the temper of this old friend of his very well. The latter was an extremely proud person, and he acted extremely casually even with him. Yet, when the latter was introducing the young man, he spoke with a very grave and earnest tone which left him intrigued. Taking a closer look, he couldn't find anything unique about this young man. One thing notable was that he was unable to see through the cultivation of the latter, but even so, given how his actions weren't aligned with the flow of the world, it was clear he hadn't reached transcendent mortal realm yet. A young lad who hadn't reached transcendent mortal actually made his old friend act so respectfully. "May I know what kind of formation plate Xianxia is looking for?" "Confinement formation, slaughter formation, illusion formation. I've a few of those in stock." Even though Guild Leader Zheng was perplexed, he had only just met the other party and it would be rude to ask of it before him. "What I wish to find is a spirit gathering formation," Xianxia said. "Spirit gathering formation." Guild Leader Zheng was perplexed. "There's no such formation plate. Usually, it's set up at a certain fixed location." Spirit gathering formation was mainly used for cultivation, and normally, it would be set up by some influential powers at a specific location to groom their talents. On the other hand, formation plates were often viewed as an offensive or defensive measure. Thus, very few people would inscribe a spirit gathering formation on a formation plate, and even he, the guild leader of the Formation Master Guild, had never done it before. In truth, Guild Leader Zheng wasn't the only one who was surprised. Even Hall Master Sai was taken aback. Hall Master Sai had thought that Xianxia was buying a formation in preparation for the exploration of the Soul Oracle Tomb. However, from the looks of it now, it didn't seem like that was the case. After all, what was the use of a spirit gathering location in there? Was he supposed to throw it in to gather spirits and capture soul oracles? "There's no such item." Xianxia frowned. "Indeed. I've never drawn it before. If you really require it, I can draw one for you. However, it'll take some time. After a moment of hesitation, guild leader Xiang said, the purpose of a spirit gathering formation was to gather spiritual energy. As such, one would be affected by the disturbances in the spiritual energy while inscribing the formation plate. As guild leader Zheng had never tried it before, he didn't dare give his word. How long will it take? Xianxia asked. This. I've never inscribed it before, so I might take some time to grasp it properly. At worst, it might take an entire month. However, if no hiccups occur, I should be able to finish it within half a month. Guild leader Zhang said. Half a month. Zhongxian shook his head. Too long. He was supposed to meet Luo Zhu tomorrow and set off for the Soul Oracle tomb. Before that, for his and his student safety, he had to at least reach Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan. By the time the formation plate was done, it would already be too late. Why? Do you doubt my capability? Seeing Zhongxian's action of shaking his head, guild leader Zhang's face darkened. Of all things, to be buying a spirit gathering formation plate. Do you even know the slightest thing about formations? If not for my old friend making this request of me, I'd definitely have thrown you out instantly. Yet, you still dare to shake your head at me? Oh, I'm not saying that you can't inscribe it. Hearing the displeased edge in the other party's voice, Zhongxian realized that the other party was mistaken. Thus, he immediately clarified sheepishly, it's just that I think your speed is a little too slow. Half a month is a little bit too long. I really have urgent use for the formation plate now. If you can finish it within 2 hours, I'm willing to pay a little more. Too slow? 2 hours? Guild leader Zhang's face immediately steeled. Flinging his sleeves, he bellowed, Hall Master Sai, is this your guest? I don't welcome him here. Xiaowu, send our guest out. 2 hours? Do you think that inscribing formations can be done as easily as eating or drinking? Putting aside the spirit gathering formation which he had never inscribed before, even confinement formations and slaughter formations which he was familiar with would require at least a week time to inscribe. On top of that, that was assuming that his full concentration was into the task such that he didn't make the slightest error. Otherwise, even 1 month would be insufficient to inscribe a single formation plate. And that was still if he did it himself. If it was a 3-star formation master of the guild, it would take at least half a month to inscribe a single formation plate. Yet, this fellow wanted it done within 2 hours? Are you here to make a fool out of yourself, or are you trying to mock me? Yes. The young man who brought the two of them in walked over and gestured, this way please. In truth, the young man was also dissatisfied with Zhongxian's attitude. He was a 2-star formation master and inscribing a single formation plate would take him more than a month. Yet, this fellow expected his teacher to finish one within 2 hours. Clearly, he wasn't a customer but a troublemaker. Guild leader Zheng, please calm down. Not expecting his old friend to chase them away all of a sudden, Hall Master Sai immediately walked up with a flushed face. Xianxia is just unfamiliar with formations. In terms of appraising ability, he's a 5-star appraiser who has passed the harmonious stream of flowing goblet. His capability is far above me. 5-star appraiser. Guild leader Zheng leaped in shock. He thought that his old friend was so fearful of Xianxia due to the latter's prestigious background. Never in his dreams did he expect the other party to be a 5-star appraiser. With just this identity, there was no one who would dare to trifle with him in Honghai City. It was no wonder why he dared to spout such arrogant words. UN. Hall Master Sai nodded his head. While master teachers immerse themselves in multiple occupations, they were, by no means, omniscient. Zhongxia's words had clearly reflected his position as an amateur in the occupation. And his guess was right. Even though Zhongxian had read through the books in Qianwu Kingdom Formation Master Guild and assimilated them, due to the guild being of too low-tiered, there wasn't much information on formation plates detailed within them. Thus, even though those were basic information, Zhongxian was unaware of them. Pardon me, I was unaware of Zhongxia's identity. Upon knowing that the other party was a 5-star appraiser, Guild leader Xiang immediately reined in his previous attitude and bowed respectfully with a clasped fist. While the ranking of an appraiser didn't tie in with one's cultivation, it was still a respected occupation due to its involvement in dealing with precious artifacts. Even as the head of the Formation Master Guild, he didn't dare to offend the other party easily. Not to mention, the other party was still a master teacher on top of that. You're being too polite. Xianxia waved his hands, not paying it any heed. After some contemplation, he asked, since it's impossible to succeed within 2 hours, may I ask you to sell me a set of Spirit Gathering Formations formation flags, core, and blueprint instead? Since there was no formation plate to be sold here, he could try doing it himself instead. As long as he had the formation blueprint, flags, and core in possession, it wouldn't be too difficult for him to succeed. Formation blueprint, flags, and core? We do have them, but if one isn't an official formation master, they'll be completely useless. Guild leader Xiang said. Formations had to be laid out in a way that aligned with the environment. If one didn't know the slightest thing about formations, it would be useless even if one were to obtain the formation blueprint, flags, and core. If one could simply forge it with just these 3 items, they, as formation masters, would have already gone out of business long ago. It'll suffice as long as you sell it to me. I'll find a way myself after that. Knowing what the other party was worried about, Xianxia continued. This isn't a problem of whether I am willing to sell or not. Seeing the other party insist on the matter, Guild leader Zheng's face darkened. He couldn't help but shake his head. Why did Hall Master Sai bring such an unreliable lad here? Formation flag, core, and blueprint were useless in the hands of ordinary people. Furthermore, they were extremely expensive. It was truly a waste of resources in the hands of the other party. Besides, while I could sell the formation flags and core to you, the blueprint, that is something similar to pill formulas. There are strict rules within the guild, and as long as one isn't an official formation master, one would be prohibited from looking at it, needless to say, sell it. From the previous exchange, it was clear that this fellow was a person who didn't know a thing about formations. Putting aside selling formation flags and core, formation blueprint. Aren't you dreaming? If anyone could simply look at the blueprints and buy them as and when they please, what kind of prestige would the guild retain? How about this? If you can set up a formation and prove that you're an official formation master, I'll let you see the formation blueprint and record it down. I'll also sell the formation flags and core to you. But if you can't do it, you'll have to drop the matter. Shaking his head, Guild leader Zheng gave an ultimatum. If I can set up a formation, you'll sell them to me. Xianxia stared at the other party. That's right. Guild leader Zheng nodded his head. Then, a slight frown appeared on his face as he continued. Why? Is Xianxia a formation master as well? But before he could finish his words, Xianxia had already shut his eyes. Give me a moment. Chapter 480, Perfect Harmony, Absence of Ripples. Give you a moment. Guild leader Zheng's body swayed from side to side. Why did it feel like this fellow didn't understand human speech? I asked whether you are a formation master and yet you replied with give me a moment. What does that mean? Do you mean that you aren't one now, and a moment later you'll be one? Aren't you just pulling my leg? All of the upper 9 paths occupation required one to put in immense effort before one could qualify as a member. Even a genius would require several years of perseverance to succeed. Yet, this ignorant fellow actually said give him a moment. Give you a moment for what? For you to embarrass yourself? Besides, closing your eyes? Close your head. What the hell are you up to? Guild leader Zheng's face twitched. If not for the fact that the other party was a 5-star appraiser, he would have surely kicked the other party out already. Old Zheng, I think you'd better prepare the set of formation flags and the core. Seeing that his old friend was coming to the limit of his tolerance, Hall Master Sai stepped forward and advised. Prepare. Indeed. If Xianxia said so, he must have a plan in mind. Besides, it wouldn't be too much effort to prepare a set. Hall Master Sai replied. He didn't know where did Xianxia's confidence come from, but after witnessing the various miracles the other party had produced, his trust for the other party had nearly reached an unconditional level. This was a person who could even teach a 4-star master teacher. Somehow, Hall Master Sai didn't think that it would be surprising if he learned about formations on the spot and succeeded. All right, I'll believe you this time. Xiaowu, take out the formation flag and core for the spirit gathering formation you have been using to practice over the past few days. Seeing the deep trust his old friend had in this young man, guild leader Zheng shook his hands in frustration. Yes. The young man flicked his wrist and a bunch of objects appeared on the floor. Formations were built using formation flag and formation core. These two were crafted using unique materials. There were differing attributes to them depending on the formation they were used for. Xiaowu was a 2-star formation master and recently, he had been practicing a graded 2 spirit gathering formation. Thus, he had been keeping a set of it in his storage ring. After the various objects were taken out, the crowd turned to that fellow, only to see that his eyes were still tightly shut. It was hard to tell what he was doing. Could it be that Xianxia intends to learn about formation on the spot? But even if he were to learn it right now, he should at least be browsing through books or consulting a teacher. To be standing blankly on the spot, what is he up to? Hall Master Sai was perplexed. The study of formations involved innumerable profound secrets. Thus, it was imperative for one to find a formidable teacher to learn about the basic properties of geography, 5 elements, yin-yang. This was the first time he had seen someone learning by standing idly with a dazed expression. But if he wasn't studying, what else could he be doing? Everyone was perplexed. In truth, it was exactly as everyone was thinking. Xianxia was studying formations. Previously, he had gathered quite a few books on formations in the Library of Heaven's Path. However, he hadn't organized and read through them yet. At this moment, with his attention immersed within the Library of Heaven's Path, all of the books regarding formation floated before him. Compile. With a silent mutter, a book with the words Heaven's Path Formation Art appeared before him. He quickly flipped it open. A vast sea of knowledge came gushing into Xianxia's mind. Since I've already assimilated these knowledge, I'm only reorganizing them at this moment. Thus, it's much simpler and more efficient. Previously, back when he was in Qianwu Kingdom, he had used the golden page to assimilate the knowledge of formations, pill forging, medicine, contained within the books he duplicated into the Library of Heaven's Path. Even though he had never gone through them before, the knowledge was already imprinted in his head. With this serving as a foundation, learning the Heaven's Path formation art became extremely easy. Knowledge flowed through his mind, and in just 10 breaths, he had already mastered it. If it was an occupation he was completely ignorant about, it would have taken at least 2 hours. But with a strong foundation built from the prior knowledge obtained through assimilation, all he had to do was to reorganize the information. Who? Opening his eyes, Xianxia turned to the crowd. Are the formation flag and core here already? Do I set up the formation here? Cough cough. Guild leader Zheng was just waiting to see what intentions the other party had when the other party suddenly opened his eyes and said such words. Just a moment ago, he was still completely ignorant about formations. And after shutting his eyes for a moment, he wanted to try his hand on setting up a formation already. Fine. I would like to see what kind of formation you set up. Since you think you're ready, you can just set it up here. Suppressing his rage, guild leader Zheng flung his sleeves and harumphed. All right. Nodding his head, Xianxia walked over to grab the formation flag and core. Seeing his actions, putting aside guild leader Zhang, even Xiaowu's face was streaked with dark lines. The very first step one should do before setting up a formation was to study the surroundings and measure the positioning of the formation. Through this, one would be able to tap into the natural flow to generate energy for the formation. Only then would one set up the formation accordingly to gather that energy. This fellow didn't even bother taking out his compass to make measurements. The first thing he did was to dive straight at the formation flag, as though a glutton seeing a pile of meat. You call this setting up a formation? You must be kidding. Even pigs would be able to fly if you can set up a formation like that. Hall Master Sai, what kind of person did you bring here this time? Harumphing angrily, Hall Master Zheng sent a message to the Hall Master Sai telepathically. Xianxia, is a truly formidable person. Hall Master Sai replied with a slightly reddened face. He had only been in contact with this Xianxia for a few days. From the first time they met at the first-class pavilion, the other party had barged through the harmonious stream of flowing goblets and nearly tore down the entire appraiser hall through that. He even managed to solve the issue of a possession by a soul oracle. Such a talented person shouldn't do something he was unconfident in. Why did he simply seem so unreliable at this moment? He knew that there were 3 things one had to do before setting up a formation. Firstly, one had to take out a compass to measure the magnetic field and the concentration of spiritual energy in the air. Next, one had to measure the size of the formation and deduce the various problems that could occur when the formation fused in with the surroundings so as to make precautions beforehand. Finally, one would calculate the specific locations which the formation core and flags had to be placed at before proceeding on to set up the formation. Putting aside 1-star and 2-star formation master, even his old friend, the guild leader, had to spend a significant amount of time preparing beforehand. Without an hour or 2 of preparation, it would be impossible for him to set up a formation successfully. Furthermore, this was only for the most basic formations. For those that spanned over several hundred meters or even several thousand meters would take at least several years of conception and deduction before there was a possibility of success. Yet, this fellow, without a compass, without any deduction process, and without examining the grounds, went straight for the formation flag and core. He was taking this way too lightly. Formidable? You call this formidable? HMH, I don't care whether he is a 5-star appraiser or not. Later, when he fails, take him away. Our formation master guild doesn't welcome such a frivolous person. Guild leader Zheng harumphed. This. Hall Master Sai was placed in an awkward position. Just as he was about to speak in Xianxia's stead to salvage his reputation, the voice of the latter echoed. Done. Done. What's done? Taken aback, the duo quickly turned their heads over. The formation flag and core that Zhongxian just picked out had been tossed out, and it stabbed upright into the ground not too far away. It was arranged in a very unique position within a circular radius of 6 to 7 meters. Didn't you ask for a spirit gathering formation? I've set up one for you. Zhongxian said. Set up one? This is a spirit gathering formation. Hall Master Sai looked at the layout before him with a dazed expression. The positioning of the formation flag and core did resemble a spirit gathering formation. But he didn't understand too much about formations, so he couldn't make a clear judgment. As such, he quickly turned his eyes to guild leader Zheng. You might have gotten the shape, but the intent is lacking. You call this a formation? Flinging his sleeves, guild leader Zheng's eyebrows shot up. Seeing the other party flying into a rage, Hall Master Sai asked, Why? Is there a mistake with what Xianxia set up? Xiaowu, come and give me your evaluation of this formation. Instead of replying, guild leader Zheng placed his hands behind his back and harumphed. Yes. The young man, Xiaowu, walked forward. The position of the formation core and flag are correct. However, a formation doesn't work just by following the layout in the blueprint strictly. More importantly, it has to be capable of stimulating the spiritual energy in the environment. Xiaowu analyzed confidently. Stimulating the spiritual energy in the environment. That's right. Flicking his wrist, Xiaowu took out a compass. With that object in hand, his disposition immediately changed. It was just a moment ago that he seemed like a mere follower, but at this instant, he carried the airs of a true formation master. Look at what he has set up. There isn't even the slightest disturbance in the spiritual energy in the air at all. In other words, the formation flags aren't placed in the most accurate positions to complement the environment. Naturally, his formation doesn't hold any power at all, and this is what we call an ineffectual formation. Ineffectual formation. Since it's a spirit gathering formation, it should gather the spiritual energy in the air as soon as it is laid out. The spiritual energy in the air should be drawn in as though a typhoon in the water and gather in this region. But the spiritual energy is showing no signs of gathering at all. In other words, he has only emulated the shape of the formation in the blueprint instead of setting up a formation. Xiaowu said. Positioning the formation correctly didn't equate to setting up a formation. Even though it sounded extremely profound and complex, this was actually basic knowledge that all formation masters, even if one was an apprentice, would know. It was just like how an apothecary wouldn't necessarily form a pill even if they were to follow the sequence recorded in a pill formula perfectly. A formation blueprint was just a fixed arrangement. For a formation to work, one had to align it with the environment. Well said. All right, Xianxia, in consideration that your hall master-size friend, I will overlook this farce. You should leave. Hearing his student's analysis, Guild Leader Zheng could tell that he had improved significantly during this period of time, and he nodded his head in satisfaction. Farce? How is this a farce? Zhongxian didn't expect the formation that he had set up with such great effort would be considered as a farce. Your formation failed to draw in spiritual energy from the surroundings. Shouldn't this be sufficient to show that your formation is nothing but a farce? Seeing that the other party refused to accept his own failure, Guild Leader Zheng was displeased. Oh, you mean this? I was afraid that you can't see it properly, so I stopped the formation for the time being. Zhongxian thought that the other party was referring to something else, so he shook his head. Then, he stomped his foot on the ground. Wang! A ripple slowly spread out from his feet, striking the formation not too far away. Then, with a slight buzz, the entire formation was immediately shrouded with spiritual energy. Hoo! The surrounding spiritual energy gathered toward the center of the formation as though pulled in by a hurricane, leaving a sharp pain as it brushed by the faces of the group. This. It was just a moment ago that Xiaowu was gleefully pointing out the other party's errors. Upon seeing this sight, he was shocked to the point that his lower jaw was about to fall to the ground. This is perfect harmony, absence of ripples. Even though it doesn't disturb the environment, it causes a huge uproar when activated. A perfect formation? How is this possible? Guild leader Zheng shrieked hoarsely. He stared at Zhongxian in shock, as though he was looking at a monster. Thank you for listening to PandaAudioBooks. If you love what you hear and want to support my work, check out the PayPal link in the description. Every bit helps. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notifications bell to stay updated with all our latest audiobook chapters. We'll see you in the next one.